Hello and welcome to the Ghibli Rewatch series of the Overly Animated Podcast, where we'll be going through every Studio Ghibli movie chronologically from the beginning. I'm Dylan Hysen, and today I'm joined by Michelle Anderer.
Hello.
And April Collins.
Hi there.
Join us in rewatching or watching for the first time all the Studio Ghibli movies now that they're available for streaming for the first time on HBO Max, the United States, and Netflix, most of the rest of the world. We'll have new podcasts every Wednesday as we go through the entire Ghibli catalog chronologically and find all of our contact information at overlyanimated.com. I'm a Ghibli expert joined by co-hosts with a variety of Ghibli experience, and today we have finally made it in our Ghibli rewatch journey to Spirited Away.
Yay.
Very exciting high point for the rewatch series, and we're going to get into everything for Spirited Away. There's full spoilers for this movie. Minor spoilers for the rest of the Ghibli catalog. Make sure you've seen Spirited Away, of course. We'll be discussing, in general, both subbed and dubbed, so but maybe primarily the subs. Watch whatever you prefer. Let's talk about Spirited Away. It's 2001, and we have our next Hayao Miyazaki movie, his kind of foremost movie associated with him in Spirited Away. He did retire for literally a week after Princess Mononoke. And then Yoshifumi Kondo, as previously discussed, died, and he immediately came back to the studio. Spirited Away is and still remains the highest grossing film in Japanese history. Very exciting.
Take that, Your Name. Yeah, can't beat
Your Name is in the top 10. Yeah, I noticed that.
I'm really upset about that.
Among other Miyazaki movies in the top 10 in Japan. But it was also a big hit overseas, kind of the first Ghibli movie to make a lot of money outside of Japan. It won Best Animated Feature at the 75th Oscars, still kind of an unprecedented thing for a non-American movie. I could cite a bunch of critics' movies of all time, best animated lists, movies, things, but I'll just say probably frequently cited as the best animated movie ever by a lot of people, if not one of the best, as a summary there. So let's talk about each of our kind of histories with Spirited Away and kind of your overall thoughts on it. Michelle, who has a long history with Ghibli movies, what about you?
So if memory serves me, I actually did see this one in theaters when it came out. And it was probably the first anime thing I had ever seen. I was very not following most of it. I think I was probably pretty overwhelmed. A lot of things about it totally went over my head. But I think even with that, I still very much liked Chihiro, and I found her a very relatable protagonist. And I still felt that way growing up. I think over anyone, Chihiro felt the most like myself, just because they spend so much time in the movie showing that Chihiro's very much just a normal girl, but with all those cute little kid quirks, how she stamps her feet when she's impatient, or clutches her shirt to herself, and whines and complains a lot in the beginning. I don't think it ever comes off as obnoxious. I think it's way more endearing than that. And the fact that she literally doesn't know how to do anything by herself to start off with, and everything is just so hard for her. As the youngest child in my family, that's absolutely a place that I was in until I had to go off to high school and college for sure. And then I was forced to learn how to do a lot of things. And I feel that's a big part of Chihiro's journey. And I think it's really interesting that because I know we've talked before about how Miyazaki kind of becomes more curmudgeonly over time. And that was something I was really noticing watching this movie, in terms of oh wow, I can see Miyazaki's desire for hard work to be shown as a positive thing for young people a lot with Chihiro right now. But it is kind of true that Chihiro's a very normal kid, but when she's kind of thrust into having to take on all this extra stuff and responsibility, she rises to the occasion. And I feel maybe a more hopeful analysis is that a lot of kids today are very much capable of the same thing. And I think it's a lot more about expectation than their lack of ability, So hopefully that's something we can get into more as we discuss. But in general, this is literally, I think, a perfect movie. It's so good at what it's doing. And it is like eye candy in a way that a lot of movies aren't. There's just so much detail literally everywhere, and it's all just beautiful.
Wonderful. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff you said about Chihiro's character. I definitely think we'll try to get back to some of that later. Perfect movie, yeah. April, what about your history with Spirited Away?
So I distinctly remember when this movie came out, because first off, it came out in theaters, which was incredible.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that any other like Ghibli movie came out, like was out in theaters or ever like premiered in theaters in the United States.
Yeah, this would have been the first one, I believe.
Yeah. So and so I remember just being ridiculously excited because I was like 11 at the time, and this is like whenever I was getting to like super peak like anime in my childhood. Yeah, so like I was so excited, and I really, really wanted to go see it in theaters, and I couldn't go because I have 2 younger brothers. And the deal with like going to the movies is that like we all have to go as like a pack, you know? And so they did not want to see this movie at all. So I had to impatiently wait until it was like out on like DVD or whatever so I could watch it. And then like I remember just being like blown away because like at this point, like I was already in love with like Kiki's Delivery Service, and like that was like my Ghibli movie. Mm-hmm. And so like I remember like watching this one and just being like, this is incredible. And like it was so beautiful, and like I was just blown away by all of it. And I remember like this is like the origin story of April, but I remember just being like, I want to create something like this. Like, and so because that's like what I went to school for and everything like that. And so like this was one of the movies that in my head I was like, I want to give people the same feeling that this movie gives me, because it just like, and I totally like could relate to like Chihiro because I was 11 at the time or something like that. So yeah, like I found her like super relatable, and like the story just like really, really compelling. And even now, like I still was like very engrossed in the movie, even though I'd seen it like a million times. It was interesting for me on this like rewatch because I think that I've only ever seen it like dubbed. And so this time I was like, I'm watching it subbed, like, because I had never done it before, because I was just used to the dub of Spirited Away, and I fully enjoyed the subbed. Like, I think between the 2 casts, like, they both, like, hit it out of the park for all of the characters. Like, I just loved this movie. And then it's great because, like, my brother, like, came back, like, a few years ago, and he's like, April, I just want to say sorry that we kept you from watching this movie because like he had watched it with like his girlfriend or something, and he was just like, it was such a great movie, and I was like, yes, if you want to go to the movie with me, like, and he's like, I know, I'm so sorry, like, so like I felt really like redeemed in that, but also like just the fact that even like my brother, who's someone who's like very like, he can be very quiet and like reserved and kept to himself. But like for him to just like come to me and be like, April, this is like one of the best movies I've ever watched. And like his favorite movie or like animated movie is WALL-E. So, so yeah, so it was like, and again, like it just brought up like being 11 again, like at that time for me. So I have a really like good emotional connection. And of course, like I picked up on all of the other like bits and pieces and stuff like that, and I had like moments where I was like, this is disgusting. So I'm just glad that I could relive all of those feelings.
That's wonderful. Yeah, to correct myself from a few minutes ago, Momononoke did open in theaters, just not many people saw it. Yeah. So, okay. I saw Spirited Away, one of the first Ghibli movies I saw. I can't remember if I saw Kiki or this one first, but these were kind of the 2. I don't think I saw it in theaters, but probably got it on DVD. Really loved this and Kiki, and always thought of this as like one of the best movies, and definitely compelled kind of my slightly later Ghibli kind of obsession. And yeah, probably one of the first anime things, if not the first, to watch. That's a common thing I've read, is like this, a lot of people's first anime anything.
Yeah.
And probably not super representative of a lot of anime, but it's okay. Yeah, Spirited Away, daunting to talk about this movie. I think I've always kind of thought of this as the best movie I've ever seen. And I think that,
Yes.
I think from all the movies I've seen, which is a lot, and, I haven't seen a lot of the live action classics and stuff, but for what I've seen, I think this is the best movie I've ever seen, kind of animated or not. I think it's hard to describe why. I think it's magical is the best kind of quality I can try to say about it. It just has this immersiveness, this evocativeness that I really don't get from literally any other movie, even these incredible Miyazaki movies that we've talked about. And I don't think Spirited Away is like so much better than these other incredible ones we've seen, but it has this kind of unique tone and emotions it evokes. I think the best way I can try to describe kind of how this movie makes me feel is that sometimes, just randomly in the same kind of vein of, like sometimes you'll just like feel deja vu of like just you're feeling something and, it just seems familiar. Like I'll feel some sort of emotion, like not even necessarily super connected to what's going on, just like maybe typically some like melancholic emotion. And it just makes me think of Spirited Away. Like
Wow.
it has such a quality to it that I just like think of the tone of this movie. It just like pops into my brain, like when in just like random spots in life. And like, that's like not a experience I think I go through with, other movies or stories or anything. So like to me, like that, I feel like is what like is really like special about this movie to me is just like how this movie makes you feel when you watch it, what like qualities it's able to evoke in its audience. And so I want to kind of, I guess, try to dig into that a little bit first. Like I think, because I do think it's not, it's not like a hot take to say this is the best Miyazaki movie, to say this is the best, one of the best movies. So, like why? What is it about Spirited Away? Because we've talked about, you could argue every movie we've talked about on this series up until now, maybe with like one or two exceptions, has been like super special and incredible. So, why this movie in particular resonates so much with people. And even outside of Ghibli movies, like what is it about kind of Spirited Away that like resonates for a lot of people? Michelle, do you have like a particular quality you think that Spirited Away has?
Okay, well, I mean, one thing I kind of wonder about is why this movie, more than a lot of other Ghibli movies, was so popular internationally, especially in the United States. And I feel like one thing Spirited Away has in its favor in terms of like broad audience accessibility and enjoyment is that it's like not as convoluted as a lot of other like I love Nausicaa and Mononoke and Lapta, but it's not. I feel like Spirited Away, it's like it's a kind of a story act structure that's like a little more recognizable. Even the fact that there's like legit like cute little sidekicks for a good chunk of this movie feels like something that like we as an audience are very used to with Disney for decades and decades before this. I think there's like little things like that just make it feel easier to watch, maybe, honestly, without as much of a cultural barrier, because there is like a lot of Japaneseness to this movie, but I think the thing that's really nice, if you don't know a lot about Japanese culture, is like our POV is Chihiro, and for her, she's just viewing everything as like this crazy spirit magical world, which like as Americans, frankly, that's probably how we're going to be viewing it too. And anything else on top of that is like nice, but you don't really need it. I feel like. And that, like, is relatively true for, I feel like, a lot of other Ghibli movies, but, like, it really doesn't matter how much of Japan you know about in this movie. So I feel like part of that structure just works really, really well for an American audience specifically. And I can't really divorce my experience watching this from an American experience. So I think, like, that's definitely one of the reasons it was so easy to rewatch as a kid, because like all I need to know is like Chihiro's a little girl. She's trying to figure out how to be her best self, and everything's crazy and wild and exciting. And it doesn't have to make sense. Like a lot of things honestly are not explained. You just get the bare bones of like, there's a bathhouse. Spirits don't like humans. Humans really smell. There's like an inherent danger to the spirit world this time, which I think is really interesting. I think this is the most like menacing the spirit world has ever seemed. Like I think before it's always seemed a little more like magical and like, oh, it's just nature and just don't be a jerk and everything's gonna be fine. But now it's like, Chihiro, if you don't eat that food, you're gonna straight up disappear. And if you eat too much of the food, you're gonna turn into a pig and be eaten anyway. So it's like, there's this really interesting balance of just like humans are really stupid now, and also the spirit world's super threatening. But if you navigate it, you can like earn the respect of the spirits and also be a better person. And I just think like that's such a brilliant combination that just ended up working really well here.
Yeah, I think it's a good place to start, which is what you're saying earlier. This is very accessible, this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It has easy kind of global appeal. So in terms of like why might this be more widely viewed than other Ghibli movies? I think all of Miyazaki's movies, to a certain extent, most of them I would say are pretty accessible and globally accessible. This one probably the most so.
The most. Yeah, I agree.
would say so. Yeah, and also the other notion is just it's very polished. I think that was kind of my argument with Mononoke. Like I love Nausicaa. I feel like Mononoke is a little more polished version. And I think Spirited Away is like the most probably polished version of a Miyazaki movie that he makes. And so of course it's like, okay, it's most accessible. But how about I think the next thing to try to tap into, I think that's a good explanation for like why it has a broad appeal. But how about for you specific, like for us, we've seen all these movies and this is still a really special movie. And maybe we know more about, through this series and just in general from focusing on movies like this, like more about them. So like, is there qualities, I guess, if any come to mind, Michelle, for you, personally about Spirited Away that make it so distinctive?
I mean, personally, it's because like everyone really validates Chihiro's power to shape the story. Like she has this incredible ability of winning everyone over, and I really like the fact that it's like everything appears really, really scary initially, but then you have people like Lynn who like really open up to her, and even like the spider guy, he's like totally like a Dola kind of character, right? Like he comes off really gruff, but then he has like that molten core that can be unlocked for the right children. And actually he's a big softie. He'll put the blanket on her when he sees her asleep. And like Haku is really great. And like even like the witches, like Yubaba, like, yeah, she's like a tough cookie. Like she has a business to run. I get it. But towards the end, like you really see her like begrudgingly respect Chihiro. And I feel like the fact that everyone just becomes so like in love with this kid, even though she's a human, she kind of represents everything they hate, to the point where like none of the bathhouse employees at the end want Chihiro to have to take that last test. They're like arguing with their boss, which you'd think they'd be too afraid to do. But they do it for her because she's just charmed all of them. And I feel like as a kid, the idea of being able to have that ultimate power where like everyone can respect you and validate your choices instead of just brushing you aside as a little kid is like the way kind of her parents do at the beginning. I feel like that's like the ultimate wish fulfillment right there. So like that's the deep reason probably why I like it so much.
That's good. Yeah, I think you're talking a lot about Chihiro and her journey in the movie and that being special to you. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think this movie in particular is very focused on Chihiro, the main character's kind of journey as like the core of the movie. In a way in which I think all of Miyazaki's kind of broad fantasy movies have, and this movie may be one of the reasons it succeeds even more so is it doubles down on it and focuses on it in a way that some other movies don't to as much of an extent. And yeah, that's great. April, how about you? Like, if you could try to tap into what makes this movie really special, what would you say?
I definitely agree with Michelle about like how Chihiro is just a very like charismatic character, and that she's an excellent focus. but very relatable at the same time. Like, we've all been, 10 years old, and, we've all sort of been in those experiences, but it's so empowering to, like, watch someone of that age also be very brave, despite, like, the crazy situation that's going on for them. I think the other thing too is that this movie has so many different, like, emotional, like, element. Like, it has a full spectrum of, like, what's going on. Like, we go from, like, extremely, like, happy, like, moments, and then we get really, like, dark and gritty and disgusting at times. So, I mean, it's creepy as well. Like, some of the stuff with, like, no face. So there's just, like, a whole range of, like, emotions that can be, like, evoked throughout this movie. Like, every time that Chihiro was crying, I wanted to cry too, because who hasn't ever been in a situation where they felt so overwhelmed, like they're compelled to tears. So I think that's something that also just makes this movie very, very special, is because, like, we've all been 10. We can all put ourselves in her shoes. Like, we can all have wished that, we could have been on this magical journey ourselves. And I mean, we kind of are, because we never stray from the focus of Chihiro throughout. So, and I think that's something that really just adds to this movie. Rather than, like, following individual characters all over the place, we don't do that. We're only focused on Chihiro. So,
yeah. I think, yeah, you guys have talked, I think, really well about Chihiro and its journey in the movie, and I think I would say, in addition to that, the main things that I would say is the evocativeness, like I've said, the magical quality to it, which, like I said, very difficult to try to describe. Susan Napier, I'll bring in quotes from her throughout. The first thing I'll say, she describes this movie with a dreamlike strangeness.
Oh, yeah. That sounds really true. Like, you're overwhelmed by the excitement of just, like, I just always think about that boat docking when her hands are see-through and the music swells, and you just see these, like, random face masks grow bodies, and it's just so exciting. You don't know what the heck is going on or where this is leading, but you don't care, because in that moment, you're just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And you get that feeling a lot, especially in the first half of the movie, I think.
Yeah, it's just, there's, like, so much is being, like, there's a lot of, like, senses that are being stimulated by your eyes. Like, there's all these, like, bright colors, and, like, there's just so much going on, like, the face masks, like, materializing bodies, and, like, there's, like, a hustle and bustle, and you kind of get caught up in, like, that, like, spirit and that energy. You're like, what's going on? Like, and you don't know if you're afraid or if you're just really, like, happy, excited, or, like, what's happening. So I think that's, like, something to be said about the music as well, is that it's able to, like, appropriately capture every single scene and just make you like be engrossed in that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, bringing in the music, and in addition to the visuals, which are, like, these huge components to the evocativeness of the movie. Definitely want to talk the most. We've talked about the music later on. But I want to break down both of the, like, dreamlike strangeness. Let's take these one by one. So dreamlike, like, I totally think this movie is maybe the best I've ever seen in, like, capturing what a dream feels like for me. For me, dreams can have just an intensity of emotion that's, like, very hard to pin down, that relative to kind of day life. And I think that's maybe a broad thing for a lot of people. But this ethereal intensity of emotion, I'll say that, feels very, very much like a dream to me that this movie has. And maybe that's why I said in the beginning, like, sometimes I just, like, feel something that reminds me of this movie, similar to how you might, like, remember a dream fleetingly, in one day. And then, the strangeness, this is something I was trying to focus on a little bit more. This watch through is kind of this movie, I feel like it clashes a little bit with my tastes, in that I a lot of times I like comfortable things, like really happy things. This movie is very strange and very scary, I think. And to me, it does so in a way in which just really enhances that dreamlikeness. I mean, I think a lot of times our dreams are always weird and sometimes very scary as well. And so, like, to me, that could be a headline for Spirited Away. Spirited Away is all just about, capturing that experience of a dream, which I really like. And but the strangeness, I mean, to me, that also plays into another kind of aspect of what makes it special to me, which is the fantasy element, the mythology to the movie. We meet so many weird creatures, this weird realm, everything's unfamiliar. I think like was said earlier, nothing's like super explained very well, but it's all, I think this movie is the most immersive fantasy Miyazaki has had. The most like heavy fantasy in some ways. And, it has this world building quality in terms of the strikingness of all the creatures that are presented that is really affecting to you watching it. For me personally, No Face has been the most the Miyazaki creature that I always has had the most effect on me. Like, yeah.
Like, in what way? What kind of effect, Dylan?
A lot of I mean, I think that's what makes No Face really interesting. Is like incredibly scary. This creature, and yet like fascinating and relatable, and yet really like sympathetic too. I'm just
thinking about like all the Twitter and Tumblr gifs I've seen of him used, and they're all so accurate. He's such a mood. He really captures a range of emotions. He's just trying. He doesn't know what to do, and he's kind of dangerous. But at the end of the day, he's just lonely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and like it's like scary because you don't know what his intentions are, and it's never like really made clear until like after the situation has like fizzled out. So I mean, even it like within that, like that would be like not only like horrifying but like frustrating too, because I'm like, I don't know what you want, like just tell me.
Yeah,
you want to give me gold. I don't understand.
Every time she turns down his gifts, like when he gave her the gold, and then like she left, and he just like has this face. He's like looking at the ceiling, and he looks so just like distraught and sad that like none of his appreciation is being taken seriously by Shiro, and it's the funniest thing to me.
Well, it's also like funny because I noticed this too, that like the mask or whatever never shows expression, but you feel all of his emotion. Like whenever like Chihiro like runs off, like he's like, here's all this gold, and she's like, no, and she runs off. Like you can feel how like I don't know if it's like heartbroken, but like just distraught that he is, like as like, and all of this chaos is going on around him. Like I think that's like crazy. Like I don't know how I feel about relating to a monster.
He's so happy to be in the cabin with Grandma, though. Like I'm so glad that even No Face got a good ending. Yeah, I was just gonna teach him how to sew. It's a really good arrangement for him.
Yeah, it's Miyazaki has great endings for characters. I feel like No Face is great. No, yeah, and for me, No Face has just been the most fascinating creature. I feel like in general, just one of the most fascinating fantasy creatures I've ever seen, and he's always really stuck with me.
He just makes whatever he wants, and it's real. Like,
I wonder if his gold was counterfeit. I'm like not entirely sure, but maybe.
I thought I remembered it being counterfeit, but like it wasn't. Like they don't say that.
No, it's not.
Yeah. How did it turn black then? Like
I had that same moment. I was just like, man, they're gonna be really upset when they find out all this gold is fake. And then I was like, wait, the gold's not fake. Like,
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I mean, there's a ton of special creatures too. The suit sprites, I think, are really incredible in this. But we'll talk all about all the creatures and all the mythology in the movie. Here's another Susan Napier quote. These are from her book Miyazakiworld. She says, "But to my mind, its intensity, opulent imagery, and sheer originality make it among the greatest, if not the greatest, of Miyazaki's films." So there's the opinion of one of the foremost Miyazaki experts we've been citing in this series.
Wow, Susan.
Yeah.
You said it.
Yeah. I mean, she doesn't often say her opinions, I think, in the book. So I think that stood out to me that she said this. The intensity, I mean, that's a big one, is the intensity of emotion it evokes, we've been talking about, but it's just a very intense movie and everything that's happening.
Yeah.
The visuals, I think, very intense. The music is very intense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's like so much going on.
And there's a ton going on,
There's
and
a ton going on all the time.
very rarely stop and take anything in, even though there is so much to take in. The opulent imagery, of course. Yeah, it's sheer originality. I mean, just so many fantasy elements that, like, a lot is based on old Japanese mythology, but all of it is just like, it's definitely the movie you most want to talk about, like, how did this come out of Miyazaki's brain, which I have a quote about, which I'll have to read in a second. And then the other Napier thing she says, she talks a lot about its disturbingness. This movie, she says this movie has a nightmarish / dreamlike intensity. We talked about this movie as very like a dream, but it's also kind of like a nightmare. Yeah,
it's like a dream that, like, have you ever had those dreams where, like, it seems like everything's going okay, and then as the dream progresses, like, it becomes sort of like a nightmare, and then, like, it progresses, like, it flows, like, in and out, and it's all, like, the same story. That I very much feel that. I don't know if I'm the only person who's
ever I absolutely understand what you're saying. Yeah, like, because your mind, I feel like how it actually happens is they're kind of disparate elements when you're dreaming, but your mind connects them all. And so, like, and that's a really powerful feeling that all this dreams that you're having is like a connected thread. And this movie really captures that, I feel like.
Well, and I think that's just incredible that this movie, like, can capture that sensation, because, like, would you classify that dream would you classify it as a dream or as a nightmare? But it's kind of both. And so I think, like, Napier's description is highly accurate. So
yeah, I think it's both a dream and a nightmare for Chihiro. Something she's, like, probably is glad she experienced, but is very difficult for her to go through. So here's a longer quote from Napier on the imagery and the disturbingness of the movie. So she says, drawing on his own psyche, Miyazaki created a work that is beautiful, moving, and spectacularly imaginative, and also outrageous, grotesque, and disturbing. Some of the disturbing elements are intentional, a means for Miyazaki to critique contemporary society using unforgettable imagery, but others seem to have emerged almost unconsciously. As he said to one interviewer, when working on Spirited Away, I frankly felt like I was lifting the lid on areas of my brain that I wasn't supposed to expose.
Whoa. All right.
More generally, he acknowledges, when I'm creating a work, I can get the feeling that the general direction is always deep in my subconscious, in a place that I can't be fully aware of. Spirited Away's second half, with its Rabelaisian rampages followed by a quietly eerie train journey, evokes a nightmare / dreamlike intensity unlike anything in Miyazaki's previous work. Which I feel like is true. I think a lot of what the qualities that come about because of the later parts of this movie feel like very much not like things we've seen before. But yeah, I think Miyazaki talking about kind of this muse artistic element we hear artists talk about sometimes, which I don't frequently hear him discuss, and that seems right. That Spirited Away would be the movie that would most just be like him diving into his brain to find these fantastical elements that comprise this movie.
It is like a very particular location that, like, is very removed from anything we've seen before. Like, because again, like, I feel like if we're not, like, a bathhouse is just like a very, like, I did not see that coming kind of location to spend so much time in, because up till this it's either been like forests or like ancient cities, or like plains in the past,
like fantasy Europe, a lot of that.
Like, this is a bathhouse in Japan in modern day. We've never really been here before. This is the most modern he's ever been, and I think it's really interesting. I was having a lot of thoughts when you two were talking about, like, how much this feels like a dream, and I do think that's really accurate. Just because, like, I feel like every, like, 3 or 4 minutes of this movie, you run into another, like, iconic scene, right? Like, so many moments are just so iconic, like them finding the tunnel, them eating the food, the pig transformation, all the spirits coming alive, like her having to cross the bridge with Haku without breathing, like going into the bathhouse, having to run down the stairs, having to meet Spider Guy, having to meet the Radish Spirit.
Yeah, that's you're describing the first 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah. the scenes is like so iconic, and the first time you watch it, it's like ingrained in you forever. So when you finally do your rewatch, you're like, oh my gosh, it's this part.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's this part. But that's literally the whole movie. And I feel like that is a very kind of dreamlike energy, because a lot of movies, it's like you have your like maybe handful of standout scenes, and then you have like a lot of downtime to kind of be like kind of the antithesis of that, so that those really exciting scenes have more energy and come alive more by juxtaposition. But this whole movie is so high energy, even like the slow moments, and there are like slow moments, but they're not slow in a boring way. They're just in a like, we're taking time to like recoup where we are, and Chihiro's thinking about like plot stuff with Haku and like what's going on there. But like it has this insane energy the entire time, the way a dream definitely does, because you'll just like be in one dream, right? And then like suddenly you'll find yourself somewhere completely different. And like looking back on it when you first wake up, you're like, wait, like how did I even get there? It's like, it's dream logic. A lot of this movie does feel a little bit like dream logic in that sense.
Yeah, I like that. As because
It
a lot
follows
doesn't.
dream logic.
It follows
I
dream
love
logic.
that.
A lot doesn't really make that much sense. So yeah, I think that's a
Yeah.
good way of saying that. Yeah, you were listing a lot of scenes. How about is there a favorite scene of this movie for you, or is there like a scene you most remember when kind of generally looking back on Spirited Away? How about April?
I most remember the scene whenever the river guardian comes in, but they think he's a stink spirit, and like her like sludging through the sludge, literally, like makes me like tense up. And then like it's interesting because like whenever like they're like pulling out all of the garbage, and then like she pulls like the fat like last little bit, like I remember feeling just so relieved during that scene. Like she pulls it out and I'm like, oh, thank you. Like like I don't know why it was like so tense, but so I like very much remember that scene. And then the other scene I really remember is whenever she is like force feeding that medicine to Haku when he's a dragon. And he's like thrashing about and everything. Like I very specifically remember that scene as well.
Yeah,
like trying to feed a dog like food it doesn't want to eat.
Yes.
Or something. It's so good.
Michelle, what about you?
Honestly, like, and this is like not fair, but like what flashed in my mind is seeing all those chickens piled up in that bath because they were really cute. Because all the creatures are so scary, and then you see all these cute looking chickens. It's like, oh well, maybe the bathhouse isn't so bad if they're here. Or like when Lynn's like when she gets that roasted new, it really shook me as a kid because like I'd been assuming she was a human because she looked more human than anyone else who worked there. Like Haku and her are the only ones who don't look like kind of toadish or just like weirdly stretched in this abnormal way. But then she like eats nudes. Like, oh right, she's not human. She's also a spirit. Oh, okay. And I love that they kind of play with stuff like that. Like once you get like a little comfortable, they'll throw something at you. When same with Haku, it's like you assume he's like just a magical guy. It's fine. And then you realize he's also a dragon. It's like, well, okay, everything I knew was a lie. And that's fine. It's Miyazakiworld. There's too many to... It's really hard. Like, I was very scarred by how horrifying the pigs all were. Like, that's not where my horror of pigs came from, but it certainly didn't help. Like, oh my god, these pigs are the worst looking pigs I've ever seen.
And, like, anytime that you ever see, like, pigs in, like, animation, like, they're cute and, like, squishy and cuddly, and, like, these are, like, real pigs.
These are real gross, awful pigs. Take them away.
This is over half of the Miyazaki movies we've talked about definitely feature pigs. None like the parents turning into pigs. That's
like Porco Rosso. Like he wasn't a bad looking pig. Like so,
most of him was human. Only his face was a pig. So like he had that going for him.
Yeah, I think he's probably making the pigs as striking as possible for effect for some of this commentary we'll talk about a little later. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like the at the end of the movie, Chihiro and Haku flying through the air together is like the iconic scene for me for this movie always. The music, that's my favorite music ever. that scene. It's not like this is like my ship or anything, but it's just the evocativeness of the dragon flight, and then the discovery, and them flying together. Always the high point of the movie for me is that scene.
Triumphant moment
Yeah.
for both of them. Like, Chihiro's come so far, but also like Haku's really has been like sticking his neck out for her more than he probably does with most people, and it really comes back to him because she's able to give him his name back, and suddenly he's like also free to change his life choices if he wants to. And like, as emotional and moving as that scene is, especially like when Chihiro's like crying and they kind of like press their faces together, I love that it's kind of like juxtaposed to like, you see one of her big Ghibli tears like flying up, you see like the mouse, and it just the tear like bounces off the mouse, and you're reminded that the comic relief is there, and it's just so good. I feel like the balance of humor in this also was just such a surprise. There's so much more humor in this than, honestly, a lot that I've seen since the Cagliostro movie. And it's like such a nice change of pace, honestly. It works so well.
Yeah, I guess, but yeah, especially with the mouse and the little bird, and but yeah, I think it probably stands out a lot compared to the horrific nature of some of the other parts of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Or like, the scene with the baby. In the pillows.
Is that comic relief or horror? Which one?
Horror.
Yeah, I would agree.
Don't play with me. What?
Like, I can't get the dub voice of that kid just out of my head. It's just like, play with me or I'll break your arm. It's just so scary.
Now that was a good impression. I remember now.
Well,
yeah.
so scary. Well, I will say, like, the sub voice is not as scary as that. but I do agree that like the dub voice haunts you.
Yeah.
And it's the same. One thing I noticed with like Haku is like his original Japanese is much softer than whichever guy voiced him in the dub, and I feel like honestly I kind of prefer the dub there, just because like it kind of adds to like Chihiro's feeling overwhelmed and confused, because like Haku, like, right off the bat, is just like, don't talk to me, like, do this, do that, like, but we're not friends, though, just kidding.
Yeah.
You're just like, what is real life? I don't understand.
Yeah, I think speaking of the dub, I mean, this is an iconic dub for a lot of us. It's what I think it's not surprising maybe that the baby's voice is scarier. I feel like it could just be on its own, but also it's like what we emotionally remember from growing up, I think, is hearing the dub voices for all these characters. I've always thought of this as a really great dub. I mean, I think a lot of these Disney dubs around this time do like really nail the characters. I will say it does have it, and I checked the song at the end. They didn't change that, the Japanese song, so that's good, over the credits in the dub. And then, it does have its like annoying quirks though, like a lot of these dubs we're talking about. I definitely noticed, since I checked at the end to see, if the song was there, they added like 2 lines of dialogue to the very end of the movie that aren't there in the original. For no reason, really.
Liked those. You didn't like it? I get that it's a very more American thing to like kind of
to try. It's trying to hammer home the themes a little bit more. I mean, it's not that I dislike it. I think like all the changes, it's in line with what the movie is going for. But my approach to this watch through is definitely like, wanting them to respect the original more. And that feels like a little bit of a significant change, is like adding 2 lines to the very end of the movie.
That's fair.
It's like Americans need less subtlety.
We need more hand-holding.
Yeah, that's what it felt like.
Tell me the theme of this movie in a single sentence.
But I have like definitely like fond memories of the Spirited Away dub. Quickly, I want to talk about like what is it, like the genre of the movie and who the movie's for, because I thought this was kind of interesting. I mean, like obviously like a fantasy movie, you could see it as a coming of age movie with Chihiro, who I think that's the next thing. We'll probably go back to Chihiro's character, but how about this as a movie that's made for young girls? Because Miyazaki, the thing a lot of people have heard is, he's his like coworker / friend's 10-year-old daughter, like he's like basing this character on her and kind of like making this movie for her and her demographic. And I read that Miyazaki researched like shoujo mangas and stuff in Japan, like aimed for young girls. So like, and I was thinking about this more. The element of Haku specifically, like manic pixie dream boy dragon who turns into a dragon. Like, isn't that like totally like a young girl fantasy type element? Like
that's
like,
my dream, man.
Like, is Spirited Away? Yeah, Spirited Away is like, I think if you would assign it like an intended demographic, it probably would be like young girls, which is not, I think, how a lot of people think of this movie.
I was going to argue about the Haku thing, but actually it is literally down to the trope of like getting to nurse your guy back to health, and I hate that.
Yeah.
I think
I think the thing, like I could definitely see, and I get the sense that like this movie is like pandered towards like young girls, and especially because like at that time, like there wasn't that much content for girls, like in terms of animation. I mean, there was like some shows, but not really. Most of everything was like, you know, Power Rangers or like, and like Pokemon was just becoming a thing. So like, I can definitely see like the need for this movie for young girls, but I think just because like Chihiro's character is so relatable that it can come off that it's not just for girls, that they're not the intended audience. Because I mean, again, like I said before, like we've all been at this age, you know, we've all lost our parents in a store or something along those lines. So we can all find that relatability in her character.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably Miyazaki. I know there's a quote like of that he's like, I've never made a movie specifically for like 10-year-old girls like that demo, so he was trying to make that with this movie. Like I think he probably like starts out like that, but basically all of his movies they become universal as he makes them. Yeah, so I think that's kind of like where he starts and where some of these elements maybe come from and where the main character comes from. But there's like, as we've been talking about, there's certainly this universality, if that's a correct phrasing, to this movie that shines through for many different types of people.
I can see this movie being made for like 30-year-old parents also, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of messages of parents we're going to talk about.
It so pokes fun of Chihiro's parents about being so like sure of the world, and then having that being used against them when they just assume like they won't get in trouble for eating food without anyone there. And like I feel like maybe Chihiro acts as kind of like a way to bring them back to realizing like their potential to be good, less like consumerist people maybe or something, and showing that like part of one of the assets Chihiro has is like, because she's younger, she's not as jaded by like society, like honestly, and like that's literally what saves her. Like if she had eaten that food, she would be as good as dead. But she didn't, and that one choice led to a lot of other really good choices that she made. And like I can't even imagine how the adults would have handled like the bathhouse. Like they probably would have wanted to fight everything or call the police instead of just like kind of interacting with it and like working with it and learning from it in the process. So I feel like maybe Chihiro's sort of like a gateway to getting a lot of adults at the time to maybe reassess their values and like what's important to them, and like what could be a better way to self-actualize themselves, because they're not done growing up. Like you're 30, that's not that old. I wonder about that.
I think that's a totally valid point. It's probably a movie that starts as being made there, but it's also a movie that starts being made for young girls that has heavy social anti-materialism commentary at its core. So, you know, like of course it has its distinctive Miyazaki element.
Chihiro turning down the gold, case in point, right? She's like, I have no use of this gold. Like, wow.
Or even just like her parents, like eating all of that food, like one, like without asking, but also there was no need to eat all of that food. Like you have a sandwich in the car. Why don't you just eat a sandwich worth of food? So I think that's like also something to be said too, is that like we just people just want to like consume everything, whether that be like actual food or buy like materialistic items. So it definitely speaks a lot about both of those things, I think. So
Yeah, let's talk about that, and let's circle back to Chihiro after, because it'll make more sense in this progression. So let's Miyazaki, as always, has some things to say with this movie.
Of course.
Michelle mentioned curmudgeonly Miyazaki. I think this is the beginning. If it wasn't before, this is like we're firmly into curmudgeonly.
I think we're firmly
Miyazaki.
in. Yeah.
He is 60 now when making this movie.
Senior Miyazaki.
Yeah, and that's how all of us, I think, see him now, because that's the image of Miyazaki we've had for in recent years. But I think there's two maybe theme areas to talk about. The smaller one, surprisingly, is his environmentalism commentary, which we can mention first here, as we've been tracking throughout all of these Miyazaki movies. Here's what Susan Napier has to say about the environmentalism in the movie. She says, in Miyazaki's eyes, the distortions of money and industry darken not only the external landscape of Japan, but the interior spiritual landscape of its citizens. Never once to mince words, the director had become increasingly impassioned in his denunciations of the modern world. The whole world seemed covered in concrete, he declared. His film images had even more potency. It is no accident that two of the most memorable characters in Spirited Away are river spirits, one shackled by pollution, the other by urban construction. So I think it is a little more subtle than we're used to, but, consider these two river spirits, the stink spirit, who ends up just being a river spirit that was filled with trash, that she has to remove all the trash in order to unlock who he truly is. And then consider that the big climax of this movie is Haku, who ends up being a river spirit who has lost himself because he was paved over, which was a running commentary on urbanism and stuff in urban sprawl in these Ghibli movies. So I think like these environmental messages are pretty prominent, although not necessarily like the main theme like we're used to in some of his other movies. And I feel like with the stink spirit, I mean, that's just, I feel like such an iconic scene that really resonates, the message, just the distinctive imagery of, him, like the filled with trash and sewage. And then, you see the very like Japanese kind of, spirit that emerges from it with like a different visual style. That's definitely like one of the most iconic scenes for me too. And so I think that's really in service of, furthering the messages that he's presenting here.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
One thing I really like about that scene is like it's the first time that everyone in the bathhouse actually like works together to achieve a common goal. Because like for the most part up to then, Chihiro, like everyone else, is kind of just in it for themselves. Like no one's really cooperating with each other any more than like their job absolutely needs them to. Like Lynn's coworker straight up was trying to steal that newt from her, even though she was like, no, it's mine. He's like, oh, come on. And like that one guy wouldn't give her any of the bath tokens, even though she just literally needed it for her job. He's just like, no, you're a human, you suck, I won't help you. But like when the need demanded it, they all like get together and they are like tugging on the rope, and everyone who's not tugging on the rope is like basically a cheerleader with the fans, like encouraging them from the sidelines. And they like collectively do this useful thing together, which is immediately kind of usurped by them all going nuts over the gold on the floor. But like within that contained moment, it's really nice to see that camaraderie. And I feel like that's something Miyazaki has been known to do really well. But it was just kind of a nice moment, honestly. Like it's as gross as the stink spirit is, like seeing them work together in that moment does feel pretty uplifting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that point. We've been tracking Miyazaki's theme of the collective that he is espousing throughout all of these movies, and yeah, I love that they work together in this crucial moment for the bathhouse, and maybe the bathhouse becomes a better place as it becomes more of a collective of people working together. The other scene that sticks out in my mind is everyone cheering for Chihiro at the end.
Yeah. Well, and everyone's just so happy and excited, like, because they were able to, like, again, achieve, like, a common goal sort of thing. So I think that's just great.
Yeah, this supportive collective, we've talked about it, and I think that is on display here, and I think maybe contrasts with some of the the economic commentary he has, which we can talk about now. So we can talk about that a little bit, although I don't think super explicitly as always. But definitely, if you're going to say the big thing, what is this movie trying to say? It's probably like anti-materialism, so let's talk about this from Susan Napier, who anti consumption, I think is what I was trying to say. But so this is in line right after she's talking about the environmentalist messages. She says, by 2001, when the film opens, the country was mired in a culture of materialism that seemed an effort to allay a debilitating sense of spiritual emptiness through incessant consumption. Miyazaki directed much of his message at parents, or more specifically, the generation of Japanese in their 30s and 40s whom he saw as gluttonous, consumption mad, and uncaring.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah. Definitely there. In Spirited Away, he shows Chihiro's father driving a flashy new Audi and boasting of his cash and credit cards as he obliviously gobbles vast quantities of food at the mysterious restaurant.
I have a question. Did anyone else see their dad reflected in him? Because I really did. I was like, oh my god, this is I'm getting secondhand embarrassment because this is exactly what my dad would have done. I hate it.
I mean, I got cash and credit. I mean, I feel like that's a universal dad, the message that is.
That is not my dad. My dad would have been
glad, April. I'm so glad.
He would have been there's sandwiches in the car.
We are saving money. We are not
saving money. Yeah, that's another way it would go.
Also, the dad being the walls are made of plaster. I know what this is. I'm an authority on everything. It's you don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about the parents. And back to the Napier quote, but the director also wanted to send a message to Chihiro's generation, or more specifically to the 10-year-old daughter of a colleague, with characteristic forcefulness. In a discussion of the film, Miyazaki referred to this girl and her friends as dullards.
Whoa.
Their pursuits increasingly alarmed him. The director had long bemoaned the fact that so few children played outside anymore.
Oh my god, Miyazaki, you curmudgeon for real.
No, the next part's the best one. He suggested that they should stop watching Ghibli videos on television and go outside to experience the real world for a change.
What?
Yeah, so where's curmudgeon Miyazaki?
So funny. My god.
It's a good line. Overall, Miyazaki hated the waves of apathy and indifference emanating from the young dullards around him. It is not surprising that the path to redemption taken by Spirited Away's 10-year-old heroine leads through hard physical labor, self-discipline, and acceptance of kindness to others, and a willingness to take on challenges. I think that last part's kind of the shocking one, is that he's scathing towards children too, in addition to the parents.
I can't believe he called children dullards. That's some strong language. Miyazaki. I agree with those qualities. Honestly, I thought Chihiro learning how to clean and to work the tub and more forcefully ask for things, and you see her become braver. Those are objectively really good qualities. But again, Miyazaki, you can't just blatantly judge all these children. They are a victim of circumstance. That's just literally what modern society is for kids. If given the opportunity, like Chihiro, to step up early, a lot of them probably will. But that's
yeah.
That's really up to other people. It's not just in their hands. Someone needs to push them there.
Yeah, and I guess think that's what the movie's saying too. Also, in addition to what he's saying. Yeah. I think it's a lot of things, and Miyazaki is multitudes, as always. I was really struck by that last part of that section, so I was
Just go outside. Oh my god.
Yeah, so I sought out a different opinion, so here's...
Oh, thank you for doing due diligence there.
Here's the other major book we quote in this series. Here's Studio Ghibli, the films of Hayao Miyazaki and Isao Takahata by Colin, Odell, and Michel LeBlanc, they say. And the first part is agreeing with the view of the parents. Miyazaki paints a stark contrast with the parenting in My Neighbor Totoro. Mei's father accepts his daughter's view of the world and creatures that he cannot see. He is supportive and attentive. Chihiro's greedy parents virtually ignore their daughter. They are self-centered and individualistic, driving an unnecessarily large polluting car, and while acknowledging the existence of Shinto shrines, do little to pay their respects. Crucially, by the film's close, they have not learned the error of their ways. Amnesia about their ordeal means that Chihiro's future is no different from when she started the adventure. If My Neighbor Totoro is a nostalgic look at the past, Spirited Away is a lament for it from the perspective of the present. But there is hope. Although her parents' generation has let her down, Chihiro nevertheless has the spirit to restore these fading values. The future lies in the hands of the children.
Haven't heard that one before. Yes, children are powerful, but is it fair to expect them to solve everything? I don't know. But, like, I get what that's saying. And, like, Chihiro, she's lucky in that she has that one token of the strange world that will be with her forever, that will remind her of the truth. So
yeah, well, she remembers at that, right?
Because of the hair tie. She'll always remember because of the hair tie they made.
And she just, the parents lose their memory. She does not lose their memory. So I think it's like the movie is saying both things. It's kind of like criticizing, I don't think Miyazaki sees children as being responsible, but they're a product of this world that he's disapproving of. And I think that's probably where he's coming from. But also he does see the hope there. And, there's a lot of hopefulness in this presentation of Chihiro. Even though, you could argue, so let's start talking about Chihiro. I mean, we can circle back with these two topics, but this next quote I think demonstrates what I was going to say with Chihiro. But it's back to Susan Napier. She says, more universally sympathetic is Chihiro, who evolves from quote unquote dullard to competent young heroine. Miyazaki describes her as an utterly ordinary young girl.
And that's true.
At the movie's beginning, her whiny ways and bratty behavior contrast significantly with even his most realistic heroines from earlier movies, such as Kiki or Satsuki. In the complex world of 21st century Japan, such an ordinary character who still manages to triumph against the odds might have seemed particularly appealing. I don't personally see Chihiro as like bratty in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
But it's definitely in sharp contrast, I think, to these other Miyazaki heroines who are always like upbeat and go-getters. And I think Kiki's probably the closest to Chihiro in terms of we see her flaws. But like, Chihiro very, I mean, like she definitely comes across as like really ordinary, which I think is great and a great aspect of this movie.
Yeah.
I do think part of her attitude also probably is the juxtaposition of her parents, right? Because all the other Miyazaki parents were so understanding. Like Kiki's parents, totally on the same page with her. The Totoro dad, totally on the same page. But her parents, like that analysis was saying, like they are kind of just like in it for themselves. Like I never get over that line the mom has when she hears on her shoulder, like, don't tug on me, you'll make me trip. Like, yes, that's true, but also that's just like not a very like chill mom thing to say. It's like, oh, don't grab me anymore, child. Like, and I do think like Chihiro's attitude as being a little more exacerbated and reluctant probably stems from just that's part of the dynamic with her parents. Like if they're less likely to listen to her and give her like choices and she feels dragged along, like she's dragged to this new town, she's dragged to this new school and this new house, like she's more resentful because she feels like she can't do anything and they don't really even listen to her, so they're not even on like the same page as a family. So I feel like based on that, her having like a much more like outwardly like objectionable like reaction to what they're doing makes total sense, right?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Joe would be like this.
Well, and I think the other thing too, like I definitely don't think that Chihiro is as bad as Napier described her.
Yeah,
but like the other thing you have to understand too is that in the beginning of the movie, like Chihiro's kind of going through like a rough time. Like her parents are moving, like, well, and it's not even her parents, like they're moving. And so, she's sort of like expressing her complaints with that, which would be 100% understandable for like any child, especially at her age, to like be worried about those things. But then her parents are just sort of very much just like dismissing her feelings, and they're just like, "Oh, it'll be fine. You'll make new friends. Like whatever."
Which, like, again, like if you're an adult, like I get kind of seeing kid problems as like, hashtag kid problems, like not a big deal, but like. Maybe, oh my God, maybe her parents just like lack some of that empathy. Maybe that's just literally it. Because like that's one of Chihiro's big strengths. Because like you do see Chihiro, like she has this ability to kind of just like bring people together. Like even like the baby who's like so terrifying. but she like takes care of him on the journey, and then he gets to meet his aunt, and then they're gonna like have a real relationship now, which is gonna improve that whole family dynamic. Like when No Face is trying to like give her gifts, like she asks him like where's your family? Like, don't you want to go home? Like she's probing for personal things. And even though Lynn doesn't want No Face to follow her, she's like, he's harmless now. And she like gives him the last train ticket so he can come on the train. So like Chihiro, like she's being very kind to people that even other people around her seem to distrust. Whereas like I feel like her parents just like don't really have that empathy for her because they just like can't put themselves in her shoes, and they're just like kind of being like jaded adults right now.
Yeah, I love that point on empathy, and I think I'm trying to tie this to kind of this where Miyazaki's coming from with his anti-materialism, and I think part of that is spiritual emptiness he sees. He sees people as not being spiritually connected, and I think for him, empathy would tie into that. Like, his parents are too obsessed with consuming and aren't like thinking of their community, thinking of other people, kind of this spiritual tie-in. So yeah, I think that's like definitely a big message, and yeah, it is like such a sharp contrast from the spiritually connected dad in Totoro.
He was the perfect dad. Like no one can beat Totoro dad. He's like the epitome of dads. It's kind of unfair.
This is the opposite. He's the opposite. Oh no, obviously we're talking about materialism and consumption. The biggest thing that I should have mentioned: the parents literally turn into pigs, like consumerist pigs. Yeah, literally that's what they turn into because of their consuming ways. So it's not, that's like very not subtle imagery. And I think the dad's behavior in the beginning is very also not subtle.
You kind of see that with Yubaba too, because like as much as I love Yubaba, like she's this amazing businesswoman with the most amazing character design I've ever seen in my life. She has a twin sister, right? So she has like a counterpart, and Zaniba, unlike Zubaba, like she lives in the woods in a very like modest cottage, just making things in a forest, and she seems a lot more content. Like honestly, like I feel like visiting that cottage is like one of the most like comfortable, relaxing parts of this entire movie, and I feel like that's very much on purpose. And I think maybe like a more subtle jab is being put at Yubaba for like, even though like it's not wrong to be a businesswoman and be in charge of your own like bathhouse, like she's lost some of that softness and some of that tranquility that her sister still seems to have. And I think like that's kind of interesting too. Like it's not even just the parents. Like I feel like even the spirit world has its own issues with being greedy about money.
Yeah, I would agree with what with all that you said about that contrast with Yubaba and Zaniba. Yubaba interesting because I do think she's also presented with like positive qualities to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And we can get, I mean, this is related to Yubaba, but like the last kind of like big commentary aspect is this, we've mentioned this notion of Chihiro needing to take on work and to make it to stay, to not be like consumed by the world of the kami or the spirit world. She needs to like continually demands work and then work hard, and that's how she's able. And running thread of how Miyazaki's viewpoint, he definitely values hard work. And I think it's tempting from probably our perspective. I'll speak for myself at least. It's tempting from my perspective to see this movie commentating on capitalism. Because literally Chihiro's name gets taken in service of the hard work she's doing.
That's true. Oh my God, Dylan.
That's how I see it. I really throughout this series, I've been so tempted to say like Miyazaki is anti-capitalist, but like he's just not. Like I don't think that's full. I think is to a certain extent, and he supports the supportive collective, and that's very socialist kind of mindset. But
right?
It's nuanced with him, yeah.
So I will say, like, I really do like seeing Chihiro do the hard work, but I think for me, it's like, especially because I relate to Chihiro more than any other kid in Ghibli, it's like, there's like a restlessness you feel when either you don't have very much to do because no one trusts you to do it because you're a kid, or you just feel so in control of your own life that you just kind of give up and just do whatever. And I feel like it's not necessarily the hard work itself that helps Chihiro be a better person. It's like her ability to kind of put her own hands to something useful herself. I think her ability to have like choice now and to be making active decisions for herself in a way that she probably didn't as just like a kid being like pushed to do like wherever, like going wherever her parents went and like having them tell her like to do the dishes or like go to bed or whatever. Like this is her just like having to make all these decisions all at once. And I feel like Haku kind of sums it up really easily at the beginning where he's like, all right, you gotta like go down these stairs and talk to this guy and he's not gonna want to give you a job. You gotta ask for a job and like, this is what you gotta do. And she's like, I can't do that. And he's like, well, you gotta. And he just leaves. And so for once she's just, it's like a live or die situation. And she just finds the will to do all these things she never would have imagined she was capable of. And I think it's literally her being thrust in that situation. She realizes she has so much more of a strong, focused will than she ever would have imagined. And I think like that's like what's so exciting about it. Cause like you never like don't believe Chihiro's growth. It feels so organic and natural how it unfolds, but it really is all about her just rising to an occasion. And I feel like the hard work's part of that, but that's definitely not like the main point.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I also think that, like, there's this element, too, of, like, you have to do this, or, like, or you will not, like, survive. Yeah. And so, like, and that's something, like, I feel very much, like, says to, like, capitalism and more so capitalism, because, like, if you don't have a job, like, you can't pay your bills, like, and then what are you going to do? Like, are you going to go out and starve? Are you going to, like, live in your car? Do you even have a car? Like, so I think there's, like, a lot to be said about that as well. And, like, I mean, like, if I had the choice, like, I would love to just stay at home all day and, like, do whatever I want, but I don't have that choice. I have to find a job, like, in order to make ends meet. And so Chihiro has to demand work in order to be essentially stay alive or not get turned into a pig or whatever other fate could have come of her.
Yeah. I was going to hone in on that too. Yeah, I think it's a great point. Like when Haku says you just have to do all this in order to survive. Isn't it just what all of us have to do living in a capitalist society? Yeah. So I think that's like great commentary. Yeah. And in terms of the hard work, I think it is striking to see like a message of this movie that also like has these anti-capitalist undertones to also like have this pro hard work. Like Chihiro finds the value of hard work. But I do think it is what Michelle was saying. It's Miyazaki's not saying that Chihiro needs to do hard work to support the bathhouse, which is largely seen as kind of an evil or not unimportant entity. Chihiro needs to do hard work to find meaning for herself.
Exactly. Yeah. It has to be something she feels more independent and resourceful of. Like, I guess if she knows how to clean that floor, she can clean her own floor later, and she'll know how to do it way faster now. like that's like a solid life skill to have objectively wherever she goes. And I feel like it's more about like that stuff than just like I agree, Dylan. We're on the same page.
The setting of like it being a bathhouse sort of sets you up to learn that humility too, because like you have to clean like the floors for the guests, you have to like clean out the tubs and scrub and do, X, Y, and Z. And so I think there's a lot to be said, because it's not necessarily hard work. It's just like basic things that you do in your life. Yeah. Like, I mean,
I think this is the core of Miyazaki's anti-materialist message, in that she's finding kind of spiritual identity through this hard work that she's doing.
It's a means to an end, yeah.
And I don't agree with Miyazaki that like hard work like this is necessary to find that sense of identity and self-meaning and spiritual meaning, but at least he's I understand where he's coming from. He's advocating for that. He's not advocating for you need to work to be a cog in the larger economy and society. He is finding like self-actualization and stuff. And like the broader theme of trying to find that is, I think, very palatable and acceptable for wide audiences.
Yeah, it's like if you can take control of this one thing, even if it seems like a really basic thing, that could lead you to taking control and making bigger decisions that have like a much stronger positive impact on your life. Because she does she literally does choose not to listen to some people's advice when she wants to be more empathetic And I feel like that's like really where like her personality shines through more than just like the doing what she's supposed to. Like she does break out of that at some crucial moments and go the extra mile, which kind of is subverting people's expectation of her, which is ultimately why I think like everyone gets won over by her. Because even when like the Sting Spirit's happening, like everyone's just kind of fascinatingly watching her like try to walk through the mud to refill the tub and like clean this guy. And they kind of think it's impossible for her. Like Yubaba is not really hoping she'll succeed. She just kind of wants to crush her because that's a fun thing to do. But when it does work, like she says, like everyone's learned from Sin today. Like they suddenly have this newfound respect for her because like she kind of beat the odds and she's like sort of the underdog. So I really like those aspects of her personality too. Like it's a mix. She's, like April said, she's learning to be more humble, but she's also taking a lot of choices to heart, and a lot of people are telling her very different things. And she's deciding what bits of those to use to her own ends, and she ends up making a lot of the best choices, in my opinion.
Yeah. And yeah, so to close out the kind of messaging part, like, and I think like the last thing to say about it is like, it's just Miyazaki's perspective on the world. Like it's where he's coming from. He finds meaning and self-actualization through his hard work. Mm-hmm. That's like where he's coming from. So that's what gets seeded into his movies. And this is a discussion we've had, a similar like themes discussion throughout many of his films in the past. So this is, I think, not surprising. But yeah, I think, and then transitioning to what Michelle was talking about Chihiro's arc. Yeah. Like she definitely is like finding herself throughout the movie. She becomes like assertive. She becomes empathetic. She starts off with like not being able to like assert herself or like really be an individual, I guess, through like seemingly through how her parents treat her and her being like forced to go along with things and stuff. And yeah, you get the sense her life is like not fully in her control with the forced move in the beginning of the movie. And she strikingly is just taking control and finding her own path, I think, throughout the second half of the film. And we've talked about, but it's like a really wonderfully appealing and broadly appealing arc, I think, that a lot of people connect with.
Yeah.
Anything else on Chihiro?
She's cute.
She's very cute.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like when Miyazaki talks about. He's like, I specifically don't want to make a cute girl. Like, I want to make an ordinary girl.
She's very like scraggly.
Yeah,
like, she's like, her proportions are crazy. Like she has the biggest head, and then these little like stick arms and legs, and these huge shoes, and it just makes her feel even more like an awkward, gangly kid, in my opinion. I think it works really well.
I think
so. Or like when
she's
Lynn
always
has
tripping.
to like Lynn has to like sift through all of the shirts to find one that's smaller.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really good too. Yeah, the what I read about Miyazaki, he's like, I want to make an ordinary girl, not a cute girl. And then he's like, oh, I'm worried she's gonna be too ugly. And then it's like, this turned out well. She's cute. This turned out well.
Yeah. Her face really reminds me of. Is Mei the littler kid in Totoro?
Yeah.
Her face really looks like Mei. It's this kind of weird, like, wider set eyes, like, kind of smush face, but, like, slightly older. And her face is completely different from Kiki or literally any other kid, like, he's ever drawn. So he definitely succeeded in making her feel, like, different. But she's cute in her own way. I mean, she's not Moe cute. Which is probably what he was trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. I think he doesn't want her to be Moe. Yeah. And I think that really stands out. She seems like really ordinary and really real. Yeah. How about some of these other characters? We've talked about a lot of them in passing so far. But Haku, Dragon Boy. I don't think we see too much into his perspective. Also, he's like a river spirit at the end, so he's not heavenly in his own kind of like. It makes sense. I feel like what he ends up being, like he is kind of this ethereal being. What a weird like romance arc that.
Talk about that, because like I was shook when I was watching the Japanese version when Zaniba literally like teases her like, oh, I think your boyfriend's outside. I was like, hold the phone.
Yeah, I didn't remember that from the dub.
The one movie where like someone in universe actually ships them, because like usually it's a little more ambiguous, but like Zaniba's like straight up like, hit your boyfriend, and I was not ready for that. Because, like, Haku's definitely at least, like, 6 years older than her. Like,
Yeah,
also,
you said that. I think it's unclear, and he's also not a human.
Well,
but,
I was gonna say he's not human, so like time is just a construct for
Oh,
him.
no. Oh no.
He's like, you lost your. I lost my shoe in you because you're a river. Like, it's such a weird conversation at the end.
But I will say that I don't like, even as a kid, I don't remember like picking up that like their relationship was completely romantic. Like, I think that it's just like one supportive friend to another. So, and I think really like when Zaniba's like, "Oh, your boyfriend's at the door," I think it's more so she's just teasing Chihiro more than anything. Cause like I remember like when I was that age, like, and I was the only girl in the neighborhood, like. Anytime any of the other like neighborhood boys would come over to play with my brothers, they'd be like, "Oh, April, your boyfriend's at the door," and I'm like, "You stop that."
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it like all Miyazaki quote unquote romances, with very few exceptions. This is not important that this is romantic.
Yeah,
it's definitely not important. I mean, knowing that
they're
Miyazaki,
like young kids, and
knowing Miyazaki like was trying to aim this more at younger girls, I guess like in some ways Haku is a more like he kind of gives me like, and hear me out when I say this, but he kind of gives me like King Jareth vibes in that like. He is significantly older, and that kind of makes him a little safer as someone to crush on, because it's not quite like he's a peer, so there's not as much chance it could really happen. And he's like supportive and nice, and she like they take turns. Like he kind of looks out for her. She like literally brings him back to life. It's like kind of a nice arrangement. It's not all about him proving himself to her. It's like it's very equal opportunity, which Miyazaki always does really well. But he also just like seems to respect her, and he assumes she can do all these things right off the bat. He never doubts her ability, which I feel like is a very attractive quality in a friend, at least. And I think like that, like Miyazaki nailed all those aspects for sure.
Yeah, and think about it, I guess, from the aspect of him. I think he's part of like the fantasy and the there's like an appeal to like she's like, are there two Hakus? Remember like that part?
Yeah.
And it's like he's like the dangerous, and he's
like,
you don't know what his motivations are, and he's like seems maybe evil, and then you only at the end you learn that he's kind of being controlled to a certain extent. So
and that's kind of like how like friendships sort of are for like people of Chihiro's age too. Like you don't really know who is your friend, who isn't your friend. Like that's what like you begin questioning all of that around that time period in your life. And I remember having those moments where I was just like, well, you say you're my friend, but are you really my friend anymore? Like maybe it started off that way, but now it seems like we're enemies. So I think it just like helps add to the relatableness of Chihiro.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think like this is like some grand romance. They do have this sweeping like romantic seeming scene, like which I said is my favorite of the movie. But again, it's not like about them being like this like romantic culmination or anything. It's about everything else, I think, that's going on with both of their characters and the figuring out his name and that playing into the story and the themes of the film. And so like I think it's like I don't know if this is a huge thing anyone's like shipping, but it's a really like I think core and pleasant, and I do think it's like really well presented in the movie, their connection. Yeah, and then Haku's it's like a very mysterious, interesting character. He just turns into a dragon. That's cool.
He just turns into a dragon.
He's being we don't really know why he turns into a dragon.
You can just accept it. It's cool.
You think he'd be a dragon spirit, but no, he's a river.
I think it's like because he went to work for Yubaba. Like Spider Boy knows everything. Apparently, he's the hot gossip keeper of the bathhouse. He said that Haku went to Yubaba to learn to learn magic from her to be her apprentice after he probably lost his identity, and that was a really bad idea because now she just kind of controls him, and he's also kind of expendable to her, which like sucks for him. Like that's not his best interest. So maybe he learned dragon magic from her. And, like, maybe, like, that form kind of reminds him of his river spirit, like, subconsciously. Like, I could see that, because, like, the river spirits are...
Like a flowing dragon.
Yeah.
River spirits are tube-shaped. Dragons are tube-shaped. Like, it all...
I like this headcanon. That made me think of just a random moment. There's so many amazing moments in the movie, but like Haku's backstory, it's being told, and then in the foreground we see animation of the little like baby mouse turns into the mouse, and he like touches the remains of the slug, and he tries to imitate what Chihiro did with breaking of the curse with the suit sprites, and they break he breaks the curse motion.
And all this around like, oh, you're so brave, good job.
And then they're all happy. Yeah, that's like the funniest part of the movie for me, is that random little scene. And it's just over top of this like seemingly important backstory for Haku. Yeah, but it's really not important, I guess, is why Haku came there. So it's like, let's do this other thing. Just so many like wonderful little moments like that, I think, in the movie. How about Yubaba and Zaniba? We've talked about them. I think Yubaba, in line with this line of older women we've seen in Miyazaki's works. Zaniba as well. But it's very incredibly distinctive character design with like giant faces and
giant everything.
Giant
She's
heads.
Huge. Like when she rams into Chihiro at the beginning, you get like a scale of proportion, and her whole head's like 3 times as big as Chihiro's whole body. It's like, oh my god, where are we? This is crazy, but it's like so good. And she has like so many rings on her finger, and like I love that her hair's tied up in this very like business kind of like just like smart bun, like it really seems to fit her personality. But she has this really roughly dressed because like she likes being ornate. So I think she's wonderful. I'm like a little scared of her, but you're supposed to be, so it works.
Yeah. I think Yubaba's in line with in the vein of a Lady Eboshi.
Oh, totally.
But like she's like does bad things, or like is like in support of bad things, but has a sympathetic quality to her, much less fleshed out. That's not as important to this movie as Lady Eboshi is to Mononoke. But you end up, she like sees Chihiro on her way at the end, and you see kind of a few nicer aspects of her, like her being a parent to a giant baby, and her being very loving and concerned with her giant baby. Which I do not understand why she is a giant baby.
The one time she hugs Chihiro is when she's like, Chihiro, you did it! We made so much money! Which is really funny, but super on brand.
Yeah. And then Zaniba, this other side of her, the twin sister, very, very caring. You see her presented maybe as an evil force at first, and then you learn the truth. And you learn the truth about like Yubaba controlling Haku, which is also like really bad, and she still comes across like overall kind of sympathetic towards the end.
Well, and especially because Yubaba at the end says like, I have to do this, like I'm following the rules just like everybody else, kind of. Like in terms of like letting Chihiro go, she's like, this is what has to be done. Like I don't get a choice.
Are those the Spirit World rules? It's very unclear.
She honors her contract, her word, and she had to accept that Chihiro demanded work because she said she took an oath when she made the bathhouse or something.
Yeah, how can you knew that?
Interesting. Yeah, a lot of like little backstory sprinkled in that we don't really touch on too much.
But I don't think you need to.
Yeah, you don't need to.
It serves the mood of the overall world and the engrossingness that there's all this like information that's there, but not like you can't like fully grasp onto it. I think
it's like there so that like if you're really like curious, you're like, wait, what happened? Like, why is it like this? You could be like, oh yeah, that's right. They did kind of mention this, like, and it's enough to sort of satisfy the explanation.
Yeah, a lot of people get distracted by like plot holes and stuff, and I think there's a lot of like little things that satisfy that itch that a lot of people have. But I feel like there's like a city in the distance that the boat comes from in the beginning of the movie too, and it's like. And they would like mention that that's there, and like I think a character mentions like maybe Lynn like going there one day.
Somewhere else,
it's like, oh, there's other parts of the Kami world, but like we just see it, and that's like such an enchanting visual to me, is the gold city in the distance, and like we never like really know too much about it. Zaniba's, we mentioned Zaniba's cottage,
I just love that she's like, and again, I might just be confusing this with the dub because it's like so much more in my brain, but Zaniba's just like, oh, okay, you're all here, come inside, whatever, and she's like, oh, and I want you to call me Granny from now on. Like, it's such a difference to you, Bob. It's so funny.
But then it's funny because at the end, Chihiro calls Yubaba Granny, and she just accepts it.
shocked. She's like, Granny? Oh, okay, whatever. It's
Whatever.
Yeah,
right.
I totally remember that from the dub. I don't know if I don't remember that just from this viewing of the sub though. I don't know if they said that. Yeah, but that feels right with the mood. She takes no face in and like you should stay with me. It's really like really warm. The feeling.
And I just love that first off, she's like makes her own yarn, which is crazy. But then I love that she's also like teaching them how to knit, like
Practical skills.
yeah, a practical skill.
Yeah, maybe all of that is like channeling Miyazaki's value of hard work, but not in this like giant mechanism of the bathhouse, like in this quieter setting.
So, in a very domestic sort of way. And I just think it's so cute that they all are just so like even her nephew as a mouse who's like doing a terrible job, but like you just know that boy is gonna request to go visit his aunt like every weekend to learn how to sew better from now on, and they're suddenly gonna have a relationship, which like Dylan, you were saying like you felt like, you know, the movie's not exactly condemning Yubaba for, you know, having this business or doing what she's doing. I think like maybe it's like the concern of like losing sight of what's really important for the sake of capitalism. Maybe that's more it. Like she now she's gonna have like a connection more to her sister. Maybe they can like, you know, bury the hatchet there. Like her son's gonna be a part of both their lives, and they're gonna have a closer sense of like familial relationships, like on top of still running the bathhouse. Maybe that's like kind of a happy medium for her ending story.
Yeah, I like that. I think there's
like
maybe you have a hopeful feeling towards Yubaba, like maybe reconnecting with Zaniba, maybe not doing things like controlling Haku anymore at the end. So it's similar to how at the end of Mononoke, Lady Eboshi's like, I'm going to do better now. So like I'll build a better town. So I think it's kind of a similar hopeful ending for these complicated characters that you get. Although again, Yubaba is presented a little bit more villainously as I think this is, you know, maybe more of a fairy tale, and she's more the wicked witch of the fairy tale, if that or something. That's but you know, as with Miyazaki, it's a little bit more complicated with all of his villain characters. Kamaji, the Boilermaker, we've talked about him, and very late. The moments when he's warm to Chihiro, I think, are pretty incredible.
He's definitely like grandpa.
Yes, he's grandpa. I think Alex, because Alex was watching with me, he said like, oh, he has the same face as like Dola's husband, kind of. And I was like, oh my god, yes, he's very like down to the beard and the glasses. I just love his turnaround from being like human, like go away, like oh you're still here, to like when Link comes and freaks out, he's like, she's my granddaughter. Like yeah, like it's such a quick turnaround. It's so good. He's a good Spider-Man.
There's a lot of, despite this world being so dark, there's a lot of hopefulness in how Chihiro is treated by people like Kamaji and Lin, and a lot, like, just she gets a lot of, like, really nice people in the bathhouse interacting with her.
Even the Radish Spirit, like, kind of like...
The Radish Spirit is really nice to her, too,
and he, like, does the lever for her, and, like, yeah.
Like, I love that there's, like, this, like, underground kindness to everybody that's there, because, like, even, like, to the very end, Lynn's like, oh, you're gonna stick her with me? Like, how could
right?
you? And then, like, she pulls her aside, and she's like, all right, we pulled it off! Like, yeah!
Yeah, I love how Lynn's next character gets more warm towards Chihiro, too, as time goes on.
She's that cool big sister we all yearn for in our actual lives.
Yes.
Yeah, I think similar-ish role to not exactly the same to the older girl Kiki interacts with
Ursula. Yeah,
Kiki,
she definitely has that kind of older mentorship energy about her.
I feel like Lin, out of all these characters, I feel like I want to know more about Lin, maybe more than anyone.
I want to know how Lin got there. Because she definitely seems like a human, but I mean, we don't really know.
Don't really know, no. The men in the bathhouse are toads, so they are clearly spirits, but a lot of the women look human-like, so it's a little hard to tell, I think.
It's interesting because a lot of the women, like, look human-like, but they're not quite, but Lynn is the most human looking.
Exactly. That's how I interpret it. She's the same as the others, she just is the most human-looking of them, but that's just a guess. Yeah. Really.
Who knows?
When's the Lynn spin-off movie? Yeah.
Yeah. Does
you
she
imagine?
ever leave the bathhouse? I need to know.
I'm like shocked how expensive these train tickets are. Like she
Right?
literally can't afford a train ticket with her job. And that like Spider Boy's held on to his ticket for 40 years and it's still good. Like it doesn't expire. Like that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like playing into how they're trapped really there. And
Yeah, they're
trapped
trapped
in
in
the
these
bathhouse.
jobs. They can't afford to leave. Maybe that's why they're so like again, maybe that's why everyone's just so like in it for themselves and like when they see gold on the floor, they just go insane because like they're so poor. They really want money.
Yeah. Speaking of Kamachi, how about the suit sprites? Michelle, I know you're a big fan.
Oh my god. Well, when we were talking about like charming moments that puncture more serious moments, I feel like two really good ones with the suit sprites is like you see them like throwing the Colin and that's like kind of spooky. You see Big Spider Guy and that's kind of spooky. But then he's like, all right, it's like a snack break. And when he throws the rainbow candy, they're just dancing around.
The rainbow stars.
They're so happy.
They're so happy. Your whole attitude changes. It's like, oh my god, they're just cute and love candy just like us. Like, it's fine. Like, we get it now. Like, that's a really charming moment. And when she has to, you know, go on her journey and like she understands the cost, like she has to like save Haku's life basically and beg for the curse to be lifted. The Sipballs like very quietly like bring her shoes out to her. They've been watching over her shoes this whole time, and that's another just really cute moment.
Yeah, and
I love the moment whenever like the one falls under the weight of the thing, so she does it, and then they all drop there.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna mention. Yeah.
They're like squashed, but still bringing the rocks stacked around her. It's so good.
Yeah, I think that's one of the funnier moments of the movie too. They all like, oh, help me too. Yeah. The spirits are just very, very funny in the movie. Yeah, a lot of, and I mentioned the little scene with the mouse and it's the shoes. Yeah, it's really, really warm and funny and endearing creatures in this. It's interesting choice to bring them back from Totoro and kind of like change how they function too in this world.
Yeah, they're like workers now. Like their whole purpose.
Like, what is it? They're like there's a spell on them get them to work like that.
Oh, that's right. Like they were independent, but there's a spell on them.
No, I think Kamachi said like they're just normal suit that he brought to life to help them. So like their choices to work for him or go back to being suit.
Yeah, because that's what he threatens them with. He's like, "You better get back to work, or I'm gonna make you suit again."
Yeah, maybe he's lying. He could just be bluffing. But I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know if they're the same as the suit sprites in Totoro, or if they, it depends, I guess, what Kamachi's backstory is. But it's like these are the same as them. These ones are in the Kami world, so they function differently. Is that what happens?
I guess.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we can only speculate. No, we've talked a lot about No Face already towards the beginning. No Face. Yeah, I'll read a quote from Susan Napier on No Face. She had a whole section on No Face. In the 3 decades as an animator, Miyazaki had created an exceptional pantheon of supernatural creatures. But No Face is perhaps both the simplest and most complicated of Miyazaki's inventions. Mm-hmm. His archetypal black garb and white mask-like face make him an easy target for projection of our own fears and desires. It bears repeating that No Face sprang, I didn't mention this yet, but No Face sprang almost spontaneously from a part of Miyazaki's brain that had gone into overdrive as time ticked down on the movie's production process. In relation, I can talk. I'll briefly talk about that after this. In relation to the vomiting scene, the director specifically speaks of the need to just spit everything out, an emanation from the dark side of the unconscious. This raging id of aggression and other antisocial behaviors apparently struck a chord among viewers, especially in Japan, a nation that places an enormous priority on conformity, discipline, and self-control. No Face's antisocial action seems strangely liberating. But yeah, like his simplicity, and we talked about this, but it just he exhibits so much, and like I think the notion that he changes in the environment, and Chihiro recognizes this and frees him from that. I think that's like a really relatable aspect and a really powerful like move that she makes, maybe even one of the most significant in the movie. And it's still, even though he's doing all these bad things is someone who she's still like empathetic to afterwards. And yeah,
that just made me think of because when she's talking to Lynn and Lynn's like, don't let him follow, she says like, he'll be fine, like the bathhouse makes him crazy. So you're kind of going off of what you were saying, Dylan, like maybe it's very like his experience is very much circumstantial to where like what place and the energy of the place he inhabits. Like in the cottage he's just very comfortable and easygoing, but in a place like the bathhouse it brings out all his worst qualities and he literally becomes a monster. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I was gonna say it almost speaks to, you know, like you're a product of your environment kind of thing. Like if you're in a chaotic environment, then you're gonna act accordingly, and if you're in a calm, like and soothing environment, then you're going to be a little bit more chilled out and relaxed. So I think that's like that says a lot to his character, especially because like he is so versatile. I mean, just because he's so simple. So.
Yeah, I agree, and he's like latching on to Chihiro because she's the one who lets him in. And
well, she showed kindness to him.
Yeah, and she noticed him. I think no one had really noticed him
in the
before.
Beginning. Yeah, fascinating, even from the first shot on the bridge, I think, with him.
I was going to say, I don't think it's that no one's noticed him, but I think it's just that everyone's purposefully ignored him, and for that because like as soon as they find out he's a no-face, they're like, oh, like they like their attitude changes, you know what I mean? So
yeah, there seems to be some bias against that, and there seem to be other no-faces too. Maybe this like that's what it's making me think of is like in a caste system, like the people that are ignored, this like undercurrent of society.
Well, and I mean like I guess like you kind of get it too based off his behavior like after he gets inside of the bathhouse and everything. So like maybe they've had the same like a similar experience with like no faces or something along those lines.
Yeah, it's clear he can be a dangerous creature as he eats, you know, several of them. But you know that as Chihiro's nice to him, he's very, very kind and becomes very nice. So I think that's like really interesting direction. Let me since it's we're going very long, but since
it deserves his best movie.
Yeah, it deserves it. It's really interesting. So I'll read this summary of the changes in story direction that Spirited Away go through, and my broad take is like, Spirited Away, one of the greatest movies ever. You might expect it to be this holistic artistic vision realized, but no, this movie, much like everything, goes through production changes, a production process, time crunch that influenced the movie. So Susan Napier says, the movie somehow weaves all these factors together to create a seamless filmic experience, but it almost didn't. Midway through the movie, members of the senior Ghibli staff realized that they could not possibly finish it according to plan. As Miyazaki became ever more mired in exploring details ranging from Yubaba's backstory to the economic structures supporting the bathhouse, the film grew more complicated, unwieldy, and long. Not wanting to extend filmmaking for another year, the group realized they needed to throw out the entire framework. What next? We suddenly changed the story, or we suddenly changed the story, or rather we narrowed it down. There was that strange figure, No Face, that stood on the bridge, and we decided to bring him into the story more. And very hastily, in 2 or 3 days, the whole project was rethought, and only after that we began to see how it could come together. What had been a fairly conventional fantasy adventure now became something very different. Miyazaki's original proposal had Chihiro making an alliance with Haku and overthrowing Yobaba, the two overthrowing Yobaba. At another point, he considered having No Face grow to giant size and destroy the bathhouse. Neither scenario occurred. The film's focus remains strongly on Chihiro's moral and emotional evolution and relationship to the evolving monstrous personality of No Face. The film's real excitement lies in Chihiro's growing maturity confronting No Face's increasingly bizarre actions rather than in an obvious and violent climax. So to her Napier's takeaway was, rather than go this like giant fantasy route, Miyazaki ends up doubling down on Chihiro's arc, basically. Which I think potentially is what makes this like huge strength of the film, as you guys cited as one of the biggest things that stand out to you. And, you know, that comes out of his reevaluating of this kind of like larger fantasy film in scope that he had originally in mind. So yeah, I think it's really interesting.
That was a lot. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think, like, I will say, hearing those other alternatives, even hearing them, it doesn't sound as strong. And I think part of the reason is, like, there's no, like, because I feel like in a movie like Mononoke, there's a very clear, like, evil. It's like humans doing dumb things and ruining the world. And it's very, like, unhappy. And there's like the hope of people fixing some things. But because it's feudal Japan, that's, like, not really going to work long term. Whereas here, there's nothing so clear cut as, like, yeah, like, don't be greedy and be more empathetic. But also, like, we don't hate the bathhouse. Like, it's not as easy as that. Like, there are good things about even the bathhouse, and there's probably even good things about Chihiro's parents. And I feel like making it more character focused and less like saying something really specific about, like, capitalism is very helpful, because then it kind of speaks to the minutia of actual life and how we navigate it, because there are no just clear goods and bads. Like, objectively, you could say certain things are bad, but it is never that simple. And I feel like focusing on Chihiro kind of shows you just, like, this is, like, a lot of good qualities that it could actually improve your life and positively affect other people, even if, like, circumstantially things might, like, be bad for them in other ways. And that's just kind of realistic and speaks to, like, a truth that I feel like we all understand about the real world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it could have, from that quote, it could have been more of a Mononoke type movie. He says he had in mind, like, exploring the economic structure of the bathhouse, but really the bathhouse ends up not being super important, it seems. No. I mean, like, it's important as it's the structure, as it's, like, the setting and stuff, but he goes in a different direction with it.
Yeah. We don't need the minutia to, like, anything. All we need is to kind of see how Chihiro's evolving. That's, like, the one thing we need clarity on. And everything else, you can kind of notice things as they occur, but they're not, like, the point in so much as Chihiro is just the point.
One of my takeaways from this story, I mentioned in the beginning, but Spirited Away, like, one of the most revered movies, people have this, like, this fascination with this pure artistic process, this pure vision that you see in the beginning and you execute. Like, Miyazaki, throughout all of his process, he does not follow this thing where he has an entire story in mind. He executes on it exactly. Yeah. He found this much more interesting story faced with adversity through production. And through all of his movies, he's storyboarding, like, the last scenes of the movie as they're animating, like, much of the movie. Wow. Like, he's finishing. Yeah. He has a very non-traditional process where he's finding these different parts of the movie as production goes along.
I was gonna say, I can't remember the documentary where they, like, talk about it. They talk with his coworkers, and they're like, "Oh yeah, like, we're halfway through making this, but we still don't know what the ending is."
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Like,
oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about his Wind Rises, I think, largely. Probably the documentary they're talking about. Yeah, it's and as you said, they're, like, always really worried that they're like, are we going to finish this? Like, where's the last storyboard? It's like, okay, and then Spirited Away turns out. So, like, there can be like, greatness and, like, incredible works from this adversity in the process, I would say. Not to the point or anything. How about next thing to. You guys good? Let's keep going to try to finish up. Okay, so one scene we haven't talked about that's so incredible, the train scene with the faceless spirits. I think this relates to what we were just talking about with the different type of movie. So I want to read the Napier's quote on the train scene too, which I find this very funny. But Miyazaki was intensely proud of the sequence, the train sequence. In a long interview about Spirited Away with the critic Yoichi Shibuya, he returns frequently to his decision to create the train ride. It was immensely important to him, and he had planned it for a long time, telling his increasingly worried staff, eventually she's going to catch the train. He calls it the climax of the movie, saying all the chasing around it was leading up to this. Why did Miyazaki place such importance on this quiet climax? Revealingly, he says, I didn't want to destroy the bathhouse. I was worried about how tough it would be on the poor, sad gods who went to the bathhouse.
Yeah. Oh my God, Miyazaki cares about the gods going to the bathhouse.
After the stresses of Princess Mononoke, the director seemed to be ready for something calmer, both in his life and in his art. Chihiro's decision to take the train indicates her final step towards independence.
Mm.
Miyazaki explains, I wanted to write a story where the girl catches the train with her own will in a world that she experiences for the first time. We know that she is very afraid and unsure of what to do. Yeah, I love that this is like Miyazaki's favorite scene is this train scene.
So
He
good.
just keeps telling them she's gonna catch the train.
Don't worry, she's gonna catch the train.
Don't
It'll be
worry,
fine.
And they're like, what train?
What train? There's a train now? Okay.
I mean, like, it is an incredible sequence. I'm not sure I
Yeah.
see it as the climax of the movie, but it's, like, really fascinating that is, like, what his high point of the film
Well,
is.
and that's what he considers the climax
Yeah.
of the movie is. Well, I mean, I guess I can kind of see that because it's a matter of her, like, finding that independence, and in order to do so, or in order to show your acceptance of that, she has to choose to leave an environment that at first she was very unfamiliar with and didn't know, like, and wasn't comfortable in, it became more familiar to her. And then, she's like, I have to do this, I have to leave. And so accepting that, like, I guess that would be like a climax in and of itself. Though I do like that. I like it as like a calm climax versus like a chaotic one. And I think that just plays very well into the story and what it's trying to tell.
Yeah, and I liked it as a contrast to Mononoke. Mononoke, more of the societal commentary, this like very action heavy. This is a more calmer movie, more introspective, focused on Chihiro, not as much commenting on these societal structures, humans' role in the world. Although it is, doing that to a certain extent. And the train, I think, is representative of that, the calmness of the train. It is a really striking scene, and the music is incredible, which I guess we'll get to in a second after do we have more characters and stuff? How about Bo?
Wait.
Bo?
Are we seeing a train thing?
Okay, what are your thoughts on the train?
Listening to April, I want to echo, like, I agree with all that. And I also think, in a way, it kind of mirrors, like, Chihiro's situation in her actual life. Because, like, that's all about her having this upheaval from her old town and school that she knew and was comfortable in, going to a new place that she was very uncertain of. But this, unlike that, she's the one making the decision to actually go off trail here into something new and unknown and uncertain. But, like, she's making the decision, and she's like, we'll see how this goes, but I feel sure enough to do this and to take this step on my own instead of being thrust into it, like, seemingly without control from her parents. And I feel like that's, like, a really nice way to mirror, like, her actual life too.
Yeah, it's very much her choice. And and I think that gets more driven in because everyone's just like, are you sure you want to do this? Because there's a chance you can't go back. Like, so, which, I mean, is to be said about any changes that take place in life, is like what the outcome is going to be. Like, is it going to return to what you consider a state of normalcy, or is it going to become the new normal? Like, no one knows. And so it's just very brave of her to accept that independence within herself. So
yeah, it's like the bravery of taking risks is a very real part of life, and she, like, showcases it super well by taking the train.
Yeah. Well, and she's not even, like, necessarily, I guess, like, I mean, she is doing it for herself, but at the same time, she's not. She's like, I have to return the seal. Like, this is the task that, like, I have to help my friend, and in order to do that, like, I have to buckle up and just go.
Yeah.
Train.
Go catch that train.
Yeah, I love this character talk based on Chihiro taking the train as this really important. But I think it's true. I think it's this really important step in her arc. And yeah, like, a motivation is like, Haku, who's shown her so much kindness, and her needing to return that kindness. And I think it's I do really love the train, and it just becomes this like eerie quiet, and the movie turning in that direction. I love that it ends up going there instead of, like, I think his giant societal commentaries, his bigger climaxes, I think that they're wonderful as well, and I just love this as being distinctive for what it is, where Spirited Away goes.
And I think it's just a unique climax in and of itself, because, like we've already said, like, most climaxes are very action-packed or very drama-filled, whereas this one, like, she literally gets on a train and she sits on it, and it's quiet and peaceful. So, like, just that in and of itself is just so, like, astounding. Like, it's brave of Miyazaki to like do that as well. Like, it's not very eventful, but it is at the same time.
Yeah, in my mind, I think the Chihiro and Haku flying through the sky is probably still the climax for me. But I like that.
That's
this
the
is
emotional climax.
Yeah.
This is the thematic climax.
The thematic climax versus
Yeah.
the emotional climax. Yeah, maybe the story climax could be different too. Maybe, yeah. I think there you could see you could see it as different things. That's interesting. Yeah, and I'll come back to the train in a second. We haven't even talked about the score yet, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that too. But
Saishi, go off.
yeah, okay, no, but any Bo the baby thoughts? We've talked about him, but my main takeaway is like I don't understand why he's such a giant talking baby. I don't get it, but it's very striking.
It's unclear. Like, does Yubaba know that he can talk before the end of the movie? Because
I actually don't think she does know.
Yeah, because that seemed very unclear. Because she's just like, "Look at you standing up all by yourself," and I'm like, "What?
Oh my god, this is. I can feel Miyazaki coming through this now. Because like the baby, like Chihiro, like he's babied and coddled more than he probably needs to the point where Yubaba's telling him like you can never leave the baby room or you'll get sick and die.
Yeah.
And, like, when he gets back to her, and again, I can't get, like, the dub out of my head, so sorry if I don't remember the real dialogue, but he says, like, me and, Sin had a really nice time, and, like, I want to go back to Aunt's place, and it's just, like, he loved being outside, and it actually helped him be less of a piece of crap, honestly. Like, it humbled him in a way too, like being able to explore things on his own and not being so coddled made him like a nicer person than he was all cooped up in that room where he was just selfishly initially trying to keep Chihiro with him to play with because he doesn't ever go to see anyone. So like I love that that's like even kind of mirrored too.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I forgot that he's probably not talking on purpose to Yubaba.
Yeah.
What an interesting inclusion. Just this rich world filled with random stuff like the baby. And is that just what for Yubaba's spirit species? What babies look like? Is that just what's going on?
Her baby might be special. Like it reminds me of Ponyo, where it's like, how did they produce Ponyo? I don't really know, but I guess we'll never know. We're
just
gonna
accept
it.
How we have this giant baby, but we do.
Maybe that's part of like the Yubaba story that we didn't get.
Yeah, that's true. He had a whole Yubaba backstory. Yeah, no, that's true. I think the only other mythology thing we mentioned is these paper birds that attack Haku, and he's in his dragon form. Of which goes through, and Zaniba like communicates through it. I think that's like a really kind of like striking and scary kind of mythology element as well to the movie.
Paper seems to have like a lot of significance within this world as well, because obviously like the little paper, they're not even like birds, they're like, I don't know, crosses almost. Yeah,
like origami birds.
Yeah, kind of. And so there's like that, but then even like, what is it, like the paper used whenever Chihiro like signs her name away seemed like, I don't know, like both of those like two scenes also very much stand out for me, like the signing away on the paper, but then like also being attacked by paper. Like
that's a good point. Yeah, I agree. That's such a striking visual of Yubaba taking the kanji from her name except for the one and reassigning her sen, which we've been referring to as Chihiro. She's sen throughout most of the movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, paper, it's interesting the role paper plays in the movie. If you thought this was a lot of analysis in Susan Napier's chapter, there's a whole section
on paper?
No, not on paper, on how food is such an important part of Spirited Away and different characters' relationships with food. And we could talk for another hour about all that. But yeah, I'd recommend it. It's, Chihiro represents anorexia, and because she's refusing to eat food, she refuses to eat food for large parts of the movie. And then there's
she's not comfortable. She only eats with
it's not like a literal just one-to-one with the disorder. It's more just like the relationship with food. Then there's the bulimic no face. Okay, so there's all that in the chapter.
Oh my goodness. I will say,
honestly, Dylan, that feels like a very like late 90s, early 2000 kind of commentary. Like for real. I remember all those Lifetime like movies.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think he's got. Yeah, I think it's more in relation to the consuming kind of thing that we already talked about. Is from Miyazaki's perspective, but yeah, like the food being material and you're gluttonous and stuff like that. I mean, the parents are eating all this food in the beginning.
There is a lot of food in this movie, but I will say those like rice balls that she gets from Haku, like man, and she's like crying while eating them. Those rice balls are so good.
They look good. Yeah, I want to talk about that scene. Yeah,
filled bun that Lynn gives her. I wanted those so bad as a kid because it just looks so giant and puffy and delicious.
Yeah, both of those very common Japanese food. Yeah, and the prominent roles in the movie. Yeah, the rice ball scenes. Okay, how about the score? Joe Hisaishi's score. For my money, this is Joe Hisaishi's best score.
Yes,
and just one of the best movie scores, probably the best movie score I've ever heard.
You're right. Yeah, it is. It's the best one because I feel like all the other times it's like you got like stuff from Howl that's so iconic, stuff from Mononoke, Nausicaa that's iconic, but it's like sometimes it's iconic but also a little distracting because it's like, oh man, this is like really good music, but that's like kind of breaking your immersion in a way. Whereas this just like, I feel like April said really early on in this that like the music just like it works off of the visual splendor so well to just enhance the visual. So like the music, like you know it's there, but it's not as stand out as much as the visuals. Like it's found this perfect way to kind of like dig under what's going on screen and kind of push it up to make it feel even more bombastic and thrilling and exciting without taking away from the impact of what's visually already there. And that's like, I imagine very hard to find that balance, but like this whole movie's like got it in spades somehow. Yeah. It's a lightning in a bottle kind of like, I don't know how this like happened so well, but it did.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of Joe Hisaishi's soundtracks are so incredible. He's so revered in his entire catalog of scores. I think the visuals in this movie are so distinctive and impactful that it's like almost impossible to undermine them.
Right? Like, maybe that's it. The game is just so strong that it just enhances it instead of feeling like the music's overpowered.
It's kind of the perfect music movie. Like it's this experiential fantasy movie immersion, and the music is such an integral component to that.
I would say it's almost like kind of like the opposite of what Michelle said, but in a sense that like the music like digs down underneath you and picks you up and puts you into like the visuals that much more.
I like that too.
Interesting. Yeah, I think they could be seen as similar in different ways of saying it. I want to talk about some of my favorite tracks from the movie. I think you have to. There's two ones I think you have to start with. One Summer Day is the beginning in the intro song as she crosses into the spirit world, it's the world of the kami.
I can hear the piano in my head already.
Yeah.
Dun 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 dun. Yeah. It's one of the most iconic melodies, I think, from movies. This is one you can find tons of clips probably of Hisaishi playing this and orchestras and stuff. There's a version with lyrics that he made to this. It's interesting.
Oh, weird.
But this is I think this is like the theme of the movie, and it repeats throughout a few of the songs in the score. I would describe the primary word as like, I mean, it serves a few purposes. The one that's on the soundtrack, One Summer Day, but melancholic is the main emotion I get. And I feel like that's one of the main things I feel from the movie. And that's to me what that theme evokes in me is just melancholy. Like it is sad and it's not this upbeat, happy theme, but it feels very like significant despite being like sad but not depressing. It's really interesting.
Maybe it's like melancholic at the start of the movie and then like wistful at the end. Because
I think wistful is a similar emotion, but it replays at the end in The Return, and you get you'll get a different sense. So maybe wistful is a good way of describing the end of it as well. It largely repeats in The Return. There's themes from it in Day of the River, which I think is the next iteration of that theme. Day of the River is what plays during this the rice ball scene that April was talking about. This is one of my favorite scenes we haven't talked about, but Haku goes to basically comfort Chihiro after she sees her parents as pigs for the revisits them again for the first time, and that's like probably the best scene for there. If you're like shipping them, it's probably the best scene for that. He's so like kind and he's really really wonderful and supportive, and they're like you see the full range of emotions. By the way, I wanted to mention during the Chihiro discussion, what I remember when I think of Chihiro, what I visualize is her curling up into a ball and like holding her knees.
Yeah.
She does it at least I
She
think
does it a
3 times
lot.
throughout the movie.
Mhm.
She does it in this scene, and I love like when she curls up. It's unrelated to the score. She like curls up into a ball, but then she like springs into action. Like she's still feeling and being overwhelmed to a certain extent, but is like taking control like towards the end, and I really love that. But yeah, that feels really real, and the what she's experiencing, the emotions she's experiencing. Yeah, Day of the River is I think it's I see this as like their theme, Chihiro and Haku. It has parts from One Summer Day. I really love this one, and then I feel like, to me, the iconic movie song of all time for me is Reprise. Which plays during like I
Floaty
talked
one?
about my favorite scene is when they're flying through the air.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
I was confused because it's called Reprise. I believe it's not a reprise of anything. But it's very similar. The progression from One Summer Day to Day of the River to Reprise. I was like analyzing that, trying to this weekend, and yeah, it's an interesting. It's not the same though in Reprise, but just this sweeping music that plays different iterations of the same melody that play to different intensities as they're flying through there. It starts off when she's still at Zaniba's cottage. That's like the movie scores. It's not something I always listen to all the time. Reprise is one I've always remembered. This song. The other ones I wanted to mention quickly, the Dragon Boy is Haku's theme. It's a really epic one.
How does it go? Do you remember?
Yeah.
No, I don't know if I
I'm
could repeat it
struggling.
off the top of my head, but I would. I'd look that the ones I'd
Boy.
recommend looking up on the soundtrack. Procession of the Spirits.
That's,
Yes.
I always, because that's just such a standout moment when the boat docks, and it's just so like you feel like something so magical is going to happen. It's just so intoxicating, that energy it brings.
Yeah, starting at about like 30 seconds or so into that song, that's the music I associate with the bathhouse.
Yes!
And, like, the spirit world.
Bustling
I really like
and
it.
full of like so much happening at once.
Yeah.
The sixth station is the music that plays over the train scene, as discussed. I see this music as very melancholic as well. But it's like really, I don't know, haunting. It's just really incredible listening to that one too. And then we mentioned The Return. That plays at the end of the movie. Always with me by Yumi Kimura is the credit song. So I've always really loved that as well. That plays over the scenes of the like chapel like room that they pass through in order to get to the amusement park. Yeah.
Isn't it true Miyazaki like listened to that on repeat during the production of Spirited Away?
Apparently, this was written for a previous work that didn't end up being made for his.
Oh,
And
really?
he took,
I didn't know that.
and then he listened to it and took inspiration from the lyrics. For
Right,
this movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
I knew it like impacted it, but I had no context. I thought maybe it was like a popular song released the year before or something. But I didn't know it was like already supposed to be for something.
No,
of
yeah,
it.
it was an original song for a Miyazaki production. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I think all the ones that play at the end for the Miyazaki movies, I think, are always made for his movies. I believe.
So fancy. Not like us Americans who just slam a pop song on the end of our movies.
Well, and then you get Ponyo when we'll get the Jonas Brothers song.
Not talk about that though, because it's too upsetting.
When we get to Ponyo, we're definitely talking about it. Were there other parts of this score you guys wanted to highlight?
I mean, like if I'm 100% honest, like I love the score of this movie, but I couldn't like tell you the names of them. I just like, does that make sense? Because I'm so like,
Yeah, that's how I feel about most scores. So
Yeah.
I understand this,
Masterpiece to the point where every
mean,
song is good.
yeah.
Well, first of all, there's so many there's iconic ones I haven't mentioned, and then also like I'm talking about the English names for these, so it's a little hard to like there's some maybe different names for some of these songs, and also like with movie scores, there's like repeating themes, so it's like which one do you select to highlight? I find it like a little bit difficult to talk about them because they're supposed to be such an experiential thing when you're watching the movie, and like isolating it.
Yeah.
It's so tied to the scene, and it's so tied in the context of all the other songs. Isolating it is a little difficult. I find that many of these songs do hold up isolated, but they're definitely like at their like most intense emotionally when you're watching the movie with the song there.
Yeah, like I could definitely like see myself like listening to the soundtrack and listening to the score like without watching the movie. But probably like what would happen, I mean, obviously like I would just be like replaying the movie in my head while listening to the music, or at least evoking those emotions and feelings. But like while watching the movie, like like the music isn't, it's not like something that's in an individual thing, because it is so connected to everything else that's going on around you, the other, like to the visuals, to the other like sounds and noises and everything else. So it's hard for like when you're like, oh yeah, Dragon Boy, and I'm like, I don't know what song that is.
Yeah. I'm mostly saying it for reference to like check these ones out later, but I agree that, and this soundtrack too is so tied, I think, emotionally to the movie. But this is such a good one from Masashi here, and I think one you'll frequently see people cite and play in orchestras and stuff. Last major thing I wanted to say was this film comes after Mononoke, which was the first time that Ghibli or Miyazaki used 3D or CG graphics or CG animation in his movie. There are certainly parts of this movie that are also computer generated. Mostly this movie is hand drawn, like normal. I think to me what stands out from computer generated is like them walking through the flower bushes.
Right, that's the only part I ever pick up on, because it just feels kind of strange. The way the bushes are coming at you.
Yeah. I was like...
Yeah, I Mononoke, I noticed it a lot more in Mononoke. I think this movie is like maybe a reason these two movies are so absolutely incredible is Miyazaki has access to this new technology of animation, and like he applies it to a certain extent. Maybe that's one of the many reasons, but he has it as he has modern animation techniques at his disposal now, and he still mostly does traditionally animate this movie, but it is applied a few times, and I do think it's really well integrated for the most part. The CG into this movie, a little bit even more so than Mononoke.
I was gonna say, I think the CG looks better in this movie, but I think it's also like layered within the like art what is hand drawn. Like it's like layered within, and so it's like it feels more natural versus Mononoke, because I remember like watching Mononoke, I was just like, oh, I can tell, like it's very like in your face, whereas this, it's much more subtle, and I think it's much more effective that way.
Yeah, it's like it's more integrated, because like honestly, Dylan, like if you could even point out any more by the bushes scene, because like the bushes one is the only one I ever remember feeling.
It's the only one you really remember. Yeah,
all the other ones like look really well blended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There's one other one I know off the top of my head. I can't even remember, but it's like a aerial shot from maybe it's at the end with them identifying when she's identifying the pigs, like something right before that. But no, there's probably others. But yeah, he's Mononoke. He's like literally the first time he's using it, and now he's a little bit better at integrating it. And it's really incredible in Mononoke as well. Like all of these are to great effect. But I think this movie only benefits from having the additional technology available to him. Okay, Michelle, other topics that are coming to your mind for Spirited Away?
Small thing, but I remember saying before that I felt like Chihiro's evolution was pretty organic feeling. Like it never feels kind of like drawn out or unrealistic. And I feel like a really nice example is just like how she treats the stairs the very first time. Like it takes her so long to get down those stairs, and she just like keeps looking down, which is the worst thing to do. There's like no handrail. She's like taking it step by step, and then when she finally like tries to like just walk like normal, the step breaks, and she's like suddenly running and freaking out. Very, very scary stair experience. She goes from that to when Haku is like being chased by the paper things. She like runs across that pipe like it's nothing. And I feel like that's just such a clear example of how far she's come in the little amount of time she's been in this new place. But it's like such a perfect visual example of like how she's growing and changing before us without like having to explicitly point it out or say anything, you know?
Yeah, no, I completely echo the iconicness of her like running down the stairs to get to the boiler room.
That scene makes me so nervous.
It's so scary.
Yeah. Like so I would not. He would have been like, "You just have to go down the stairs," and I would have looked down the stairs, and I would have been like, "Well, I guess this is where I end, guys." Like,
there's no handrail.
Yeah.
It's a quiet scene, but like it's just one of the many scenes in this movie that's just really memorable.
Yeah.
I like when that scene happened in this watch through for me. I'm like, oh man, I'm paying attention fully.
Yeah.
Like, this is so this is the scene, and it's just her going downstairs. That's fine.
Well, and it's crazy because she literally just has to go down the stairs, and you're like, oh my gosh, is she gonna make it down the stairs? Like, what's gonna happen? Like, it's like such a simple task, but yet like you're very involved in it, like emotionally too. And then like you're like, whoo, she made it down the stairs. Yes, okay, let's open the door. Like,
yeah, next step, just open the door. I just love when she gets down like only 3 steps, and then she like looks up like, yeah, I'm doing so well, and there's just so many steps left, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be literally all day.
Yeah. Well, it's a great scene. Michelle, anything else?
This is too like there's so many moments. I just really love Chihiro. I mean, as much as we said we don't like the last line that didn't exist in the actual movie before the American dub, but when they say like, oh, going to a new school, that is scary. And she's like, I think I can handle it. I appreciate it only because it's the first time the parents are practicing empathy by really being like, oh yeah, like actually being scared of this new school is a valid concern. Like, it's them extending an olive branch, and I appreciate it for that, even if it wasn't supposed to be there,
Yeah.
Right? Isn't it funny that the most sympathetic line from the parents is not real? Like, that's not what in the original.
Rip.
No, it's I don't know. Yeah. I want to watch the dub again to see any other like small changes. I think we noticed a few of them, but still like a really great and iconic. Unfortunately, one thing I remember the dub for is the DVD, and then it starts with an introduction from John Lasseter.
Wait, really?
Oh, yeah.
You're about to see. You're in for a real treat.
Yeah.
That's like the first line he says.
John Lasseter.
Like,
we don't need you to tell us that.
Yeah, like we don't. That's not aged well. John Lasseter's involvement in this, but he like oversaw the production of the dub. That's like a story.
Yeah.
Story. But April. Anything else from Spirited Away?
Oh gosh. I feel like we hit everything. Like,
do you think we hit every single thing?
I mean,
movie
no,
runtime.
but like I don't know. Like, I could just say I could go on and on about this movie forever because I think like it truly is one of like the best animated films, and like it makes me like happy because it was able to reach such a like wide audience and have sort of that global impact for like if I could have picked any I guess like the only other movie that I really know of, like Ghibli movie that kind of has that same impact, would be Mononoke, but I think that came afterwards, and but
found its following.
It like later
overseas.
found its following. But even still, like, this is like much more like, I think it's made better. I think the story, like, not that Mononoke isn't a great movie, like, don't get me wrong, it's a great film, but I think this one is just like it hits a little bit deeper. It's so, I don't know, like, everyone can enjoy this movie. It's just great. Like, I love this movie. So
we love it. Yeah, that's why we talk for over 2 hours about it. We love it.
Yeah.
I will say, I've always thought this is like the best Miyazaki movie, but having gone through his previous work so far in the series and analyzing them in such depth, I think if you want to say basically literally any of his other previous movies is the best Miyazaki movie, I think there's a defense for any of them.
Yeah.
I think like
even
I don't think
Poco? Oh yeah, it's not Miyazaki.
That's not Miyazaki. That's not Miyazaki. You know, I love the weird Takahata movies that are around this time too. It's just very different. Very
Yamada's
different.
so good in that crazy soundtrack where it's just that person going like, "Hey, yeah." Like, I will never get over that. It's so good.
It's not related, but no. A broader point is like, yeah, Spirited Away is incredible, and it might be the best, and might be the best of all time. Also, like his other works preceding this are so absolutely incredible. Yeah. We'll see later in the series if we think the same of the Ghibli movies after Spirited Away, which I, coming into this series, look at in a different light than the reverence I've applied to some of these other ones.
Like, it's interesting to watch this movie like as an adult and comparing like my feelings from like when I first watched it to now, and feeling a lot of like the same emotions and things, but then also like being able to again like appreciate and recognize more of the themes and like the subtleness and all of that stuff. So I think there's a lot like I have a deeper appreciation for this movie now.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely talking about everything like this, but it's also like you feel like the most important part I feel like is the experience and the emotions of watching it, and you totally tap into that as a kid too.
Well,
so
tapping into it as a kid like is obviously one thing, but being able to tap back into it as an adult is like a totally different
powerful
experience.
too.
Yeah,
it's really powerful too. Yeah. Michelle, I asked if you had anything else, but any closing thoughts? Those are sometimes different.
If I had like 8 hours to sleep on it, I'm sure I'd come up with something new. But I just, again, like this is, in my opinion, this is a perfect movie. Like this is that once in a lifetime chance where like all the things you're trying to do line up and work so perfectly well, and you make something truly better than the sum of its parts. And I love knowing that it was such a chaotic production experience because, I feel like maybe especially with animation, like you have like a certain amount of time you're allowed to like write a story, and then you just are supposed to commit to it. But like you could only be in your third draft. It might take like your 24th draft to really flesh out what's at the core of what you're trying to say and what makes the most sense. So I'm kind of really impressed that they were willing to just give it another go for something more cohesive, and maybe to more of the core of what the actual point of the story was supposed to be. And it's all the better for it. I wish more people would be willing to rewrite things, even if they feel kind of locked in. It's just a truly impressive movie, and I feel like it truly is that beautiful, like I feel like Disney, like, tries to, like, because, like, they never brand their movies as kids' movies. They always brand them as family movies. They're supposed to be movies that are enjoyable for all ages. But I feel like this really is a movie that could presumably mean something important to you at any point in your life. I don't even know if that's intentional for them, but, like, it absolutely is. And I feel like that's, like, the best kind of movie that has unlimited rewatch value for you as a viewer, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. Unlimited rewatch value. And yeah, I would echo perfect movie and everything. It's the rare, almost impossible thing where everything came together right on this.
Like despite the chaos.
And maybe in service of the chaos if it's in if it's in service of a better movie. You start with it has the key element of starting from, in my opinion, the greatest entertainment artist of all time. So you start there, and then still everything needs to come together to create this movie. And we're so very blessed that it did, and also that he had so many other movies that came together in such an incredible way. In addition to Spirited Away. Okay, I think that's gonna do it for our Spirited Away discussion.
Woo! Good job, team!
Yay!
Proud.
I'm glad. Yeah, I'm very happy. I'm like, I said this in the Mononoke. I was always so daunted to talk about Spirited Away and Mononoke. This is one way to do it, is to try to analyze every single thing, and I think we did it. I'm happy that we got in depth into all these things, and I think did it a lot of service. So thank you, Michelle, April. Thank you guys. Thank you for listening. If you listened to this whole thing, thank you guys.
We're proud of you.
You wrote so many like analysis things. Like, good lord, that's a work in of itself.
Me or the audience? Oh, me? Okay.
Whoever. Susan.
Yeah, no. Shout out again to Susan Napier. Yeah, no, she makes the preparing for these like very much easier than it should be, because she already has condensed all this stuff into Miyazakiworld. If you want to contact us in any way or check out the other things we talk about on the podcast, let's look for overlyanimated.com. Find everything there. If you consider supporting us, the Patreon is what supports this podcast at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Danny. And thanks as always to our patron executive producers, Ryan, Steve, Alex, Beatrice, Hugh, Michael, Needle, and Phonician. Yep, we're shifting gears next in the Ghibli Rewatch series to these post-Spirited Away films. First up is Cat Returns.
Oh my god, what a shift. I'm excited.
Michelle loves it. I
Oh my God,
doubt
yes.
we'll go 2 hours on Cat Returns.
Probably
but we'll
not.
See.
That's okay.
We'll see. We'll see. That's okay,
if we
though.
tried hard enough.
We really
That's
tried.
okay,
Just
no.
only talk
No,
about
we-
Tim Curry.
Yeah, we still have Howls, like, right after that, so that'll be a very interesting one to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then and then there's Wind Rises. So only Poem Ponyo, of course. So we still have 3 Miyazaki.
I can imagine
making
people's
it-
state of mind post Howl, and then Ponyo comes out, and they're just like, "What? What is this?"
Okay, we'll talk about it in Ponyo. That was like right after I got into Ghibli movies.
Oh,
I was like, oh
really?
my god, I'm going to see my first
Oh,
Miyazaki movie
no.
in theaters, and it's
Oh,
Ponyo,
yeah.
and it's like this wasn't as good as the other ones
Oh,
I saw.
boy.
That's okay.
Yeah,
That's okay.
it's still pretty okay.
It's still good on its own. We'll talk about it later. I'm sure we'll find an appreciation of Ponyo and of Howls and Wind Rises. I think a lot of people think very highly of innately. So, okay, well, we're excited to get into all these last Miyazaki movies, these last Ghibli movies. I think we cited everything I needed to at the end of this, so we will see you guys for the next ones. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.